All right. I think we're live. Maybe. Using a new system, new camera, so remains to be seen how well this works. Let me know how the sound is. Amit, nice to see you. Hey, Chris. Thanks. So I'm using OBS, which I hadn't used before, and I'm using a new camera. I'm using a digital SLR, so you'll probably see that the picture's better, but the technology is just different than I'm used to. So I'm trying to make sure that I'm not screwing anything up. I almost wasn't able to go live for just members. I thought I was going to have to go live for everybody because I couldn't figure out the settings, but it worked out. Hi, Cherry. Nice to hear from you. Bambika, nice to hear from you. Thank you. So let's see, a couple announcements. So there's a poetry contest that if anybody doesn't already know about and you're interested in entering, hopefully someone can post the link. Maybe Vani can post the link here. So the poetry contest is video only. So I had to come up with a way to make sure that people don't sort of cheat the system on the poetry contest, meaning enter multiple entries. Not that any of my members would do it, but you know, when you open something like this up to the public and people can win like big prizes, like very good art, then the concern would be someone would try to find a way to, you know, enter multiple entries or something. So the one way we thought of to make sure that people are being honest and only entering once is to have it requirement for it to be video recorded. So I think the limitation was 3 minutes. I have all the rules written under the video where I announced it. But the number one prize is a piece of art by Cryptic. It's a custom piece, so one of a kind original by the artist Cryptic, which is very highly valuable actually. And he's creating it just for this contest. So it's a pretty sweet first prize. The other prizes are also very good. They're all art. This is for our friends in North America, essentially, so the U.S. and Canada. I'm going to change something real quick here. The reason for that is that I can send things easily to U.S. and Canada, but big pieces of art are prohibitively expensive to send to like Europe or Africa or something like that. So just moving things around here, guys. So, yeah, so anyone who's anyone's entering the contest from, say, Europe or anywhere outside of North America, there's going to be a different set of prizes, and those prizes will be basically one-on-one sessions with myself or a couple of other non-dual facilitators. So that's the contest. There'll be the top 5 prizes in both the North American category as well as the everyone else, the non-North American category. And so there are going to be at least 10 prizes. 5 of those are art, and like I said, the number one prize is a very valuable piece of original art by Cryptic. So I'm totally excited to actually watch these poems, and I'm going to have several people help me judge this and come up with a system to rank the top poems from what we read. So there's only about 50 people that have entered right now. Let's see if anyone has posted the link yet. That's okay. I'll get it up there before too long. I think only 50 some people have entered. So you have a really good chance of winning something if you want to enter. So that's one announcement. What else we have? I'm filming a documentary next week, and there's going to be a lot of people in it. So I'm going to be in it. Violet's going to be in it. A couple of friends that you may not know. Mark is one of the people I've interviewed, and he was in the Double Barrel as a facilitator. He's going to be in it. Ishwar's going to be in it. Alma's going to be in it. Eric is going to be in it. Kogan, who's a Zen monk, is going to be in it. Who else? I'm missing somebody. Anyway, a couple more people than that. So we're going to be filming a documentary. Hired a filmmaker who's very experienced and loves this subject, but he's kind of new to it. But he's not new to film. He's worked in many years in film, including filming and editing and so forth. So we're going to be doing that next week. It'll be months before you see anything from that, though, because the filming process will take an entire week, but the editing process is going to take a lot longer. so we have that going on. And we also have a retreat coming up in North Carolina at the end of November, if anyone's interested. And we have a retreat in May in Kentucky at the Kentucky Castle. That one's a sort of multi-modality retreat where we have a lot of different facilitators, different processes. We have the work crew from the documentary, The Work, coming to do workshops, the way they do it, full on. We have Violet there. We have Josh coming. We have Alma, Chris Guimond speaking. You're going to learn TRE. You're going to do some seasonal interpretive dance or intuitive dance. There's a large group. What else we have? We have hypnosis. I don't know much about that. It's a facilitator that was recommended by the person that I sort of am co-hosting this with. So that's in May. If you're interested in that, just look up Wild Health Summit. It's all one word, Wild Health Summit. But if you Google that, you'll find it, the link to the retreat. And I'll probably have another online retreat in December, probably the very last week of December after Christmas. So like Wednesday through Sunday, something like that. I haven't announced it yet, but that's probably going to happen. So I think those are all the announcements for the moment. Let me just say hi to everybody here that I missed. Kate, hello from Liverpool. Hey, Andy. Hope you're doing well as well. Hi, M. Fadi from Vancouver. You entered ages ago. Yeah. I haven't watched anyone's videos. I've clicked on a couple of links to make sure that people are uploading them correctly, but I haven't watched any of them because I kind of want to watch them all at the same time. So I'm not swayed by when I watch them or whatever. We'll start taking a look at them when we get closer to 25,000 views, 25,000 members on the channel. Subscribers, excuse me, not members. Nublar, hello. Life with Kyle, hello. Oh, thanks. This is a Canon R5C. So first digital SLR I've really used for this kind of thing for streaming. And the tech is a little tricky, but this is out of the box. I haven't changed anything about the settings of it or color or anything. So it looks pretty good out of the box. Yeah. So what do we want to talk about today? Or does anyone have specific questions? Or suggestions, topics? I hope I didn't lose people because I had to eliminate the initial live link, the video for the initial live link I scheduled because that wouldn't work with this system. So I'm going to have to figure out some of this tech. Hi from Denmark. Bjarki? Not sure if I'm saying that right. Okay. Well, we can just talk about the topics that have been coming up lately. Um, so, as I've mentioned before, longer form talk, always love those. Okay. Yeah. So, as I've mentioned before, um, it's very common for whatever reason in this space that certain topics tend to come up in clusters over time. So I don't know, over a period of a few weeks to a couple of months, often one specific topic will just keep coming up over and over. And it's not just with me or the people I interact with frequently. It's like coming from all over the place. People from all over the world, that I talk to will randomly message me here and there about exactly the same thing. It's quite uncanny sometimes, but it's also not surprising. It just has a feel to it. So that is definitely the case. And lately, it's been interesting. A lot of stuff has come up around grief, loss, surrender, and really how that ties into non-duality, non-doership, and what we could call helplessness in one sense. So that sounds like a mixed bag of principles or a mixed bag of experiences, but they're all very much interrelated. And it's such an interesting thing, this whole process, because it's certainly something that feels like you make a choice to engage it in a certain way. You make a choice to practice or inquire. You make decisions about how to practice, how to inquire, what books to read, what teachers you're interested in, whether you go to retreats or engage one-on-one with teachers. It seems like there's a lot of, personal buy-in to that path, to that journey. And there is. I'm not trying to discount that and say, I could just say, well, there's no one doing that and it's just appearing and all that, which is true, but it doesn't feel like that, right? It feels quite like there's someone in the driver's seat doing all of this, practicing. Also, someone to whom all of it's happening as well. There does feel like there's times when this is just happening to you, or this is just unfolding how it's unfolding and you have no choice. But that's just the other side of the same coin. It still feels like you're the central character, right? For a while. And you can have an awakening this way. An initial awakening can certainly occur, and that sort of center of experience is still there. It may be far more free. You may have a lot more access to unbound conscious experience, or even altered conscious experiences, quite spontaneously. You may have a lot more access to fluidity, peace, deeper states of samadhi. You may have deeper insights, including experiences of non-dual, non-separation with your physical environment. So all of that can happen, but there's still a central character there, or a central. I made a video about this, I think last night. It'll release in 2 days, but like a solidifying element, or a unifying element. That's a better word for it. There can be a unifying element to your experience that you don't even notice. You don't really notice it's there because it feels like you. It feels like whatever's going on with you. It feels like your journey. It feels like your spiritual life unfolding. It feels like your path, your ups, your downs, your struggles, your breakthroughs, like the substrate out of which your experiences are built, apparently, seemingly, is still there. And I might say that that's kind of the first half of the whole deal. I make these artificial divisions because it's different for everybody. There are different ways this plays out for everyone, and kind of in different orders in one sense. But there are definitely broad movements of this process for any given individual. And I can divide it this way, saying that all of that I described, that's kind of the first movement or the first part. And then at some point, the fabric of that unifying element that you overlook, that you don't realize is there, or it just feels so familiar you can't imagine how it would be without it. You definitely can't imagine it. It's not imaginable. But it doesn't even dawn that could just not be there because it's so familiar to you. Yeah. It's kind of like in one sense, it'd be like saying your body. Your body's so familiar to you, you can't imagine it just not being there, for instance. And then all of a sudden, it starts to crumble or deconstruct itself. Or there's like sudden moments where it's just not there. And that is not something you overlook. I mean, it's very obvious. It's incredibly obvious. And it's like, wow. Whoa. It opens up to, instead of there being a fabric to reality, a structure to reality, a structure to yourself and your life and time and space, it's like instead of that, what's replaced it is a sort of mystery, a mysteriousness, a sort of sublime question mark has replaced reality. Yeah. This is a deeper movement of the process of the unbinding, as that unifying structure that we might call a self starts to fall away or starts to blink out of existence. And it can happen in a lot of different ways. Like I said, it can happen slowly. It can happen in little bits. It can kind of come and go for a while. It can just completely subside and not come back. I've heard of all those ways of it happening. But more important than developing a doctrine around this, I don't say this so that people walk away going, oh, do I believe in no self versus the self with a capital S? Is this a Buddhist thing? I also don't want you to walk away looking for it or expecting it, because you can't. You won't. The way you would expect it through thought and anticipation and remembering what I'm saying right now is going to be a reflection, because it's going to be based in thought. So it doesn't really help you to try to remember it or anticipate it either. The reason I say it is so that for two things. One is part of you already knows this because it's already here. It's already the truth. It's already the experience. It's just that unifying element, which is impossible, is getting attention. The mind is doing something impossible, creating something that's not there. But there's of course a part of you, a part of reality that absolutely knows what I'm talking about. So that's one reason I say it. It's just a resonance, perhaps. The second part is when it starts to happen or appear, this can kind of soften the blow. Not that it's a blow necessarily, but sometimes it is. Sometimes it's really a hard thing to adjust to. Other times it feels like a very natural transition, and then it can feel like everything in between. So having heard this and touched in, to that part of yourself that is ineffable with this message, then as it sort of unfolds, it feels natural. It feels like, okay, there's existential terror here from time to time, but it's okay. It makes sense. There's something here that makes sense. Not logical sense, instinctual sense. And to trust it and trust the unbinding process. That's why I say it. That's why I talk about it. But it's a completely different way of experiencing reality after. It's very difficult to talk about what actually is dispelled, what goes away, because nothing actually goes away. But the change is undeniable. It's also very clear. There's nothing confusing about it. It's just that I just can't make language with it. There's no way to do that. No one can. No one's ever been able to do it. They point to it. Sometimes the language is pretty good. It just seems to work. But pointers and language and paradigms and strategies and techniques all lend themselves to a potential for being co-opted by that tendency to solidify experience or that tendency to unify experience. So anything, meditation and teachers and ways of speaking and processes, all of that can and will actually, by the collective mind identification, the matrix, those things will be solidified into processes, traditions, all of it, right? That's okay as long as you keep taking this deeper. As long as you're willing to go off the grid, off the map, off the matrix, off the socially endorsed mass illusion. If you're willing to just go where this takes you, you'll be okay. This will continue to unfold very naturally. That's really the key. And be willing to feel what you're going to have to feel to go there. And that is really emotion, ultimately. Some of it's fear, but it's very direct fear, like you hadn't felt before. Not psychological fear. And then at some point, not even emotional fear. It's energetic. But it's okay. I would say you can handle it, but there's no you at that point that can handle it. So it's just electric fear, full on. But it comes in, but the key is it really does come and go. It's not a permanent experience. And any thought about it at that level will be terrifying or scary or disconcerting. But if you just keep with the basics, realizing that a thought, an interpretation, a meaning put to that experience is just not it. It's just a pure experience, and pure experience is always okay. You'll get through that. You'll get through the emotional barriers, the confusion, the disorientation. And once you get beyond the confusion and disorientation, that's when you really start to feel a lot of that very direct, intense emotion periodically, like fear, sadness, grief, and even elation, ecstasy, pleasure like you've never felt before too. Things just get very direct without filters, without mitigation of the mind, mitigation of will, mitigation of reactivity, resistance. When that's all fallen, then you get experience full on, which is great, but it takes a bit of adjustment. Okay, let me just see what y'all are saying here. Yep, had some really, Life with Kyle said I had some really deep grief come up 2 days ago. Felt really good when it came through properly. Yeah, right? Sadness is one of those things that often some people more than others, but just totally repress it. They're afraid to feel it. Not because of a decision you made, just because of conditioning patterns, perhaps empathic conditioning or impressioning by parents or whatever. But when you really feel it, when you really feel that sadness move through, it's cleansing. It's energetic. It's a feeling, pure feeling. And it doesn't mean anything good or bad. It's just what it is. And it's refreshing, and it's a nice release. Okay. Ann Brown. Can't stay as I have an appointment at 2:30, but wanted to pop in and say hello. Hello, Ann. Have a good appointment. All right. A father of 3 and 5-year-old, and I get triggered by childishness. When I get the opportunity to sit, I feel a lot of grief and sadness until my mind starts to distract me. You get triggered by childishness, right? Now, I mean, that's something that happens to parents. Like any parent has been through that, right? But maybe I would just suggest inquiring into whether, what are you really triggered about? Are you triggered because the child is being childish? Or are you triggered because you had to suppress your childlike tendencies at some point? Maybe just get on the floor and roll around and be childish with them, whatever kids are doing. Kids are such good teachers. Animals and pets are too, of course. They're so simple, so direct in play. And everyone really wants to just relax enough in life to play, Just let that childlike nature come up through you. Let it find its way back into your life, into your experience, because that's what you want, I think. I suspect. Yeah. So the same person asking the question, the inquiry emotion work has been going on for a while, getting frustrated. It's getting frustrated because you're expecting it to lead to an external or an extrinsic outcome rather than just go right to the source of this issue, right? Let your child be the teacher. Don't overly spiritualize it, You want to play. You want to be simple. You want to be a child. You want to be innocent. That's what we all want. To move through life with total innocence, simplicity. Yeah. Find that in yourself. Maybe through activities, maybe just through looking really closely at everything. Yeah. When you see your child playing with a toy or doing something that your mind tells you that's not useful, not important, is childish, whatever. Notice you're looking at your thoughts in those moments, the internal movie screen. Now look at what's actually there. Get on your hands and knees, get down there, and look at what that looks like. That toy, that color, the texture. Feel it. Play. Get down at their level, Get on the floor. Get on the grass. See the world the way you used to see the world, that you want to see the world again. And that you actually never stopped seeing the world. It's already there. It's just that the thoughts hypnotize us. Soren, did I go live early? No, I think I was going to do it from noon, 12 p.m. my time. There's always a chance I screwed up something, though, and I'm early because I do that sometimes. Stephanie, I get lost in stories about attack, defend. How do I go to the bottom of the stories to be able to let them go? I also notice that I care and struggle letting go about how others see me and being accepted. Yeah, this is a big one, right? Validation. It's like fear of humiliation, wanting to control other people's perception of us. There are a lot of practical techniques for this. There are a lot of practical approaches. One is just to tell yourself in every situation where you're concerned about what someone else thinks of you or sees you like or whatever, just tell yourself what they believe about me is truly their business. It's not my business. I should not be in their business. What that person thinks of me is their business. My behavior is my business. What I do, how I treat people, how I treat myself, that's my business. But what you say about me when I'm not there, what you think about me, all of that, that's your business. Totally. That can be really hard to do when we have a lot of preoccupation about worrying about what other people think of us or how they see us. It can initially be a challenging. This little fly wants to play. Talk about playing. It can be a challenging thing to do at first, to keep reminding yourself of that. But over time, you'll start to actually feel it like, oh, they really do have the right to believe anything they want to believe about me. Because they do. And it's not your business. Really. And what a bunch of effort and waste of time to try to imagine what other people are thinking and, theory of mind, right? That cognitive faculty we develop somewhere between 3.5 and 4 years old, where we're aware of other people's inner worlds and then we want to manipulate their inner worlds and, all of it. So just a major distraction. It's not particularly helpful. It can be helpful for empathy sometimes, if you really try to see the world through someone else's eyes and, what are they going through? Like that kind of thing through compassion, that's a good use of it. But to worry so much about what other people think, what they're saying about, And then another way of addressing this really is if you have a tendency to do that, if you have a tendency to really worry about what other people think or whatever. Really look at yourself. I'm not saying this is true of you. It may or may not be. But look at yourself and go, do I gossip? Like, do I occupy my time judging other people and talking to other people about other people? And, because if we spend our time doing those kinds of things, then we'll also be in fear that other people are doing those in regards to us, right? It's just a major distraction. All of the gossip, talking about people, worrying about what people think of you, and it's just so much. It's like a habit, right? It can be kind of an addiction for some people, but ultimately, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything productive. It doesn't. It's just a major distraction, right? So seeing those elements of that preoccupation, I think, is helpful. I mean, that's at a somewhat of a superficial level, but I think it goes pretty deep even into close relationships. There's other approaches, of course. Great question. That's a very common one, by the way. Life with Kyle. Oh, also thought it was starting in 2 hours. You guys, it's very possible. It's very possible that I'm just way early. I was having so many challenges with my my tech issues like that. I might have just started the thing early, but I'll stay on for a while here. All right. Let's see. Watched one of my interactions with Z-Dog earlier. Particularly found it fascinating how deep you can actually go into the taint with the right kind of gravy. We had somewhere he has the episode called the Taint episode. It's so funny. We talk about non-duality and awakening in the beginning, and towards the end we just go off the rails with taint talk. But it's actually one of the funniest things I've ever recorded. So, you could always search his channel for the Taint episode. Kaz says, I had an awesome awareness experience that lasted about a week back in 2008. It collapsed, I guess. I had work to do. I have been trying for so long. I feel like I'm close to something. Okay, here's the bad news. You ready? You'll never have that back. Because you can't know what it is. You can't know what it is anymore. The way you're remembering it, and what you remember is the side effects. So the mind, what happens is, let's say there's a big opening right now. Joe Schmo, regular mind identified human, doesn't know anything about this stuff, has never had a profound insight or anything. And all of a sudden he's blown open. The ego just comes to a stop. The mind comes to a stop. The experience of reality just opens up, and there's deep peace, clarity, formlessness where there used to be form, right? There's nothing to say about that. There's nothing even recording that, right? But that won't last forever, typically. So what happens is the mind starts ramping up. What I mean by why it won't last forever, the complete lack of thoughts in that moment won't last forever. So then the mind starts ramping up. The insight is still there. Once you've tasted that, you don't forget it, right? You can't untaste that. But the mind will start ramping back up. But what the mind does very quickly is it goes, oh, that was awesome. That was so cool. That felt so good, And you start remembering aspects of it. You turn it into an experience and a memory and so forth. And then that memory creates another memory later, and the memories just kind of propagate. So we're talking 10 years later, we're talking 15 years later, right? What you can even know about that is so distanced from what it actually even was at that time in the relative sense. In the absolute sense, it's right here. It hasn't changed. It hasn't gone anywhere at all. So it's right here. So just understand, I'm not trying to say this to be disappointing. I'm just trying to say this to say, just like we were talking about a minute ago with like gossiping or talking about other people or worrying about what other people think of me, it's just a distraction. It's just one more way the mind distracts us. It does it through, remembering the past, wishing for the past to come back, or longing for the future. Like, these are just movements of mind, but they don't have to do with the actual insight, because the insight is right here, right now. And often what happens is unknowingly, to some degree, and this will happen to everyone, but to some degree it will happen. For some, it happens to a large degree, and it happens for a long time. But what will happen is we'll use that sort of sweet memory, that romanticized version of what happened and so forth, which again is the side effects of it, not the actual actuality of it, because the actuality of it's right here. We'll kind of use that to distract ourselves when we feel where the realization's really taking us. And it's really taking us deeper into that insight. And to clarify that, we're going to go through the emotion body. We're just going to go there. We're going to go through the emotion body. We're going to go through some intense emotions, resistance patterns. And often we sense that and we almost bounce back, and we're like bounce back into the mind. And a very convenient thing to do when we bounce back into the mind is turn that peak experience, which is the only way we can remember it now, even if it was an awakening, turn that into the holy grail of experience and chase it, or imagine it will be permanent sometime or something like that. Just forget it, really, because there's no way you can know about it in a way that's helpful. All that's happening is a reflection of a reflection. It's just more mental stuff. So it's just more about dying into this moment again and again and again and again until the letting go is so natural that it's automatic, until the letting go is seen not to be something you're doing or reminding yourself of or being reminded of, but it's intrinsic to experience itself. The letting go constant, say transient nature, is one element or aspect of what I was talking about earlier, that second phase when the unifying experience that we overlook for so long starts dropping out. As that drops out, this transient nature is revealed. Transient nature simply meaning nothing is in perpetuity. Nothing is continuous, nor did we want it to be. Trying to keep things in continuity just breeds fear. You don't need to keep anything in continuity. You never have anyway. So it's just a rebirth, always rebirth. This moment is rebirth. Cool. Okay, question. How does one navigate grasping at the thought of changing or healing the world? This is a tricky one because it's a, what is it? How do you say it? A wolf in sheep's clothing. It's not what it appears to be, in my experience. As we start to wake up, I will say this: it's partially authentic, and it's partially inauthentic in my own experience. As we start to wake up, our heart really opens. We start to have compassion in a different way. We start, maybe early in life, we didn't even know what was going on in the world. Maybe we didn't care what was going on outside of our own neighborhood, our own school, our own family. When you're a child, you don't know and you don't care. The older you get, the more, hopefully, worldly knowledge you get, and you understand like, oh, okay, I'm benefiting from something, but that person's maybe getting the other side of it or whatever. And then we see like what terrible things that go on in other parts of our country and other countries and all of it, right? Poverty and environmental issues, all of the stuff. So as we become more and more aware of that, and we start to open, if we simultaneously wake up. If we don't wake up but we become aware of that, what happens is we start to justify our views and we get really entrenched and we get political and we start to, really solidify seeing only one side of things. And we get angry and we believe we're right and, that kind of thing. That's what happens when we do have some knowledge of the world, but we don't want to really be vulnerable enough to realize like those people aren't other people. They're not. No one's really different from me. I just happen to be in the situation I'm in, but I could very easily be in that situation, and I very well might one day, right? That means disease, old age, death, illness, lack of safety, poverty, all these things. We're all prone to them. So yeah, you can learn about the world and then solidify the ego around seeing one specific view, but you really got to hypnotize yourself and surround yourself by people who are continuing to hypnotize themselves. And that's when you get into really intense ideologies, and those can lead to massive violence, right? We've seen this throughout history. Now, a better way to do that, in my opinion, is gain that worldly knowledge, really understand, different aspects of things, meet people, travel, read good news sources, whatever, and then wake up and continue to wake up. And as you wake up, your heart just opens. And that can be very daunting, because you start to feel other people's pain as your own. You start to feel other people's suffering as your own. So it can be very challenging. That's the truth. That's the sheep's clothing. The wolf inside, The deeper truth is you still haven't gotten to the root of your own suffering. When you get to the root of your own suffering, all of that looks very different. I'm not saying you ignore it. I'm not saying you suddenly don't care about poverty and violence and unconsciousness and how it affects the world. You actually care very, very deeply about it, but you see its root and its source, and you see what you can do about it. And the only thing you can do about it, in my view, my opinion, and also the opinion of Buddhism, probably Hinduism, maybe the core of a lot of religions, like, the mystical core of religions, which I would consider the core of religions, not the political core. I think probably from all those points of view, we're in agreement, and that is wake up to your true nature. Wake up to your unbound nature. Wake up to your innocent nature and keep going. That's what you can do about it. That's what you can do about it. That's what I realized very clearly. Took a lot of time. There was a lot of iterations of compassion. I still feel deep compassion, but it's not a distraction. And it's not a distraction from seeing the truth that is easy to avoid about ourselves. And that's what I point to all the time. That's all I point to. Yeah. So that's my answer. I don't know how that good that was, but okay. Okay. Angela, do you know Jeffrey Martin? I don't. I've heard his name. I know I think he has a finder's course. I came across him through Frank Yang. His extensive scientific research into non-duality and awakening is fascinating. It would be awesome to hear you chat with him. Yeah, maybe sometime I will. That'd be a good conversation. Andy B. I just learned the hard way not to skip the emotional work, right? Well, you got to learn the hard way sometimes. I learned everything the hard way, so you don't have to. It's going to happen for everyone. There's no one who doesn't have repressed emotion. There's no one who doesn't have unmet needs that they're mistaking all of their desires for. I might have said that backwards. That's a hard thing to say, but I just want to say, like, if we all were fully authentic and congruent and sincere with the emotion body and everything, that we feel is in the relative as humans, awakening would be so easy, and it would happen probably far more spontaneously, far more frequently. This is the difficult stuff, so. The rest of the question or statement this person made, I had massive issues with not being heard. Seems so trivial, but the catharsis and energy shift, wow. Yeah, you got to be honest and sincere with yourself about what your apparent unmet needs are. And I say apparent because they feel very much like needs when we're unconscious to them. If we explore them in depth, we may actually find that I don't really need that in the way I thought I did, but by avoiding it, it was building itself into my behavior, my interactions with others, my interactions with myself, my distractions of mind, and so forth. Okay. Let's see here. Grace. Hi, Grace. Dying into the moment. Is that like being totally in presence, or is it different? Depends what you mean by presence. There's presence, and then there's presence. I have a video somewhere called "What Do I Mean When I Say Presence?" And I'll actually refer you to that because I think it's the only video I've really made of that sort or along those lines. But I'll briefly tell you what I mean by that is, talking about the present moment, the now, things like that are a reasonably, at least in pop culture or non-spiritual culture or whatever, it's a reasonably trendy or popular thing to talk about, which isn't bad. It's a good thing. But when we first come into contact with some message like that, presence, it may mean one thing to us. It may mean something to us, and we may get a true authentic experiential knowing of it by the way it's described to us. But that is scratching the surface of the surface of the surface when it comes to the depth to which presence goes, right? Presence isn't a thing. The way I'm speaking, it's not a thing. It's not something you cultivate. It's the nature of experience right now and always has been, always will be. So your fidelity with that becomes clearer and clearer and clearer. And often it takes big leaps when structures of identity fall away, structures of duality fall away. There's a quantum leap at times in the clarity of that. I can't tell you how many people I've been around or just watched going through all these stages of realization, and it's not uncommon. You'll experience something, a big shift, and maybe you won't say it, but part of you thinks like, how could it get clearer than this? And then it does. And it's like, whoa, and then sometimes I'll say, oh, just wait, because it gets clearer, It's hard to explain why that is or how that is, but it does. So when I say dying into the moment, at least right now, what I mean by that is in deeper realization, the non-dualistic, meaning not in time or space, nature of appearance, just the sounds, the visual experience that you're having right now, the sensations in your body, the movement of your mind and consciousness right now, all of those become completely infused with something that is not of this realm, not of the self, not of the person. It's a kind of mystery, a kind of mysteriousness, an aliveness that is ineffable. It's transcendent. But it's just vibrating with juiciness. That's dying into the moment. The moment overtakes you. As the textures of experience, though, meaning the sense fields. As one sense field. Can you track with that? Does that make sense? Can you feel it? Soren. All right, let me go here. I've retreated alone to a house in nature. I love that. And close by the ocean. Wow. Good for you. I had an urgent feeling to explore deeper into my true nature. Any tips on getting the most out of it? Well, you already listened to your instincts, which is awesome. That's 90% of it, right? Yeah, as you move through that space, the house and inside and outside, feel into the spaces there, into the areas, the movement of the body, how it coalesces with the sound of the ocean, with the sensation of the exact place you are in that environment, because the energetics of a local environment are such that moving a certain way, moving even to a certain place at the right time, has a profound effect. Adyashanti said something really cool. He said it more than once, I'm sure, but he said, there's not just enlightened people, there's enlightened moments and enlightened spaces and areas and locations. And I think that's absolutely true, for sure. So let the environment that drew you there, that called to you, and you listened, let the environment teach you. Let it show you. Let it open you. Let it open itself. Feel into it. Be innocent. Don't overthink it. Trust movement. Trust color. Trust sound. Trust stillness. Come into communion with the environment. That's what you're called to do there, yeah? Okay, Nublar. What do you mean by dying to the moment? Oh, when I sit and listen, I feel bursts of emotion from my chest. It feels like pure presence, lasting 2 to 3 seconds. Then a thought like, this is it, interrupts it. Here we go. This is it. This is the big one. Yeah. Thoughts are so nasty, aren't they? So troublesome. Well, my answer previously to what I mean by presence and dying into the moment may be helpful. In those situations, then dying into the moment means honoring what's happening. So if your attention just drops into the chest, into the sensations, into an emotion, and you feel this immersion, and then thoughts come, right? And then the tensions and thoughts and consciousness and movement of mind, the dying into the moment means honoring the fact that that's what's happening. Your attention has moved from here to here. It's that simple. No, don't fight it. Don't resist it. Don't have a preconceived idea about what should be happening. Oh, I shouldn't have thoughts. I should stay down here. That's okay. Let everything move how it moves naturally. If we just get out of the business of trying to manage everything, life is so simple. This process is so simple. So just get out of the management, and let thought be thought, sensation be sensation, movement be movement, and stillness be stillness. Okay, breaks the moment and feels like nothing changed. But when you say breaks the moment, what is breaks the moment? What is the nature of that? Right? It's a judgment. It's a belief or a thought. So what's happening is there's identification with that thought or that analysis. Right? Nothing breaks anything. Like there's no moment to break apart from anything that could break it. I promise you, nothing breaks presence, right? So, but a thought can say something, and that thought can be distracting, and we can give it attention, and we can even wrestle with it, apparently. I say apparently because there's nothing wrestling with thought. It's kind of an illusion with the mirrors, the double mirror illusion where one mirror is reflecting another one, and it makes it look like there's a whole lot there that's not really there, a whole lot of depth on either side. It has that kind of effect to it. So just notice it's a thought, yeah? It's consciousness. Don't get too tied up in something being broken or getting somewhere or not getting somewhere or closer or farther, right? All those judgments, each one can just be reduced to the thought substance. There's nothing really there. Okay. Lisa B. Lately, I've been having moments, usually, that wake me up from sleep. There's another theme that's been going on is sleep. People talking about waking up from sleep with all kinds of experiences, changes in sleep patterns. I've had changes in sleep patterns. But it's a very common thing I've been hearing for weeks now. So lately I've been having moments, usually that wake me up from sleep, of powerful, strong energy moving through my body. Yeah. Yep. I could call that Kundalini, but it doesn't need a name necessarily. But it's exactly what it is, energy moving through your body. I don't feel like I've had a significant shift, but this is something new. Yeah. Yep. A lot of this stuff comes through in sleep. A lot of changes, readjustments. Even insights can come in sleep or when you wake up from sleep. A lot of strong emotion can come through in sleep and through dream. There's nothing specific to do about that or with that. If you're really curious, you could ask, is there something else here? Like a message? Is there something it's trying to tell me? And hold that lightly, right? Because you could easily get into analysis that's unnecessary, but there may be something there, but there may not be at all. Okay. Grace said, thank you. You're welcome, Grace. Sarah Walker Ting, this presence has been consistently with me all day, every day for 2 weeks. I love it. Seemingly moving down into the body. That's beautiful. Isn't that wonderful? Could it not be here, Sarah? Could that piece actually not be here at all? How could it not be here? Right? When you start to feel that piece, it has a quality to it that shows you that it's not like it's new. It's not a condition or an experience. Well, it's not an emotion. It's not an interpretation. It's more primary than all of that, right? It's an immediate knowing of a sort of peace that already exists. Isn't that beautiful? It's so still, isn't it? Amazing how still things can get. Soren, I've noticed as I get deeper and become more quiet, my internal thought stream seems to get louder and better at disturbing me. It becomes more and more difficult to ignore them. Well, I would look into that particular interpretation, that it's harder, that because the thoughts are more just active. By the way, as I say at the beginning of every retreat, just understand that as the body-mind quiets, the apparent activity of the mind seems to increase for a while. It's not actually increasing. You're just disidentifying from thoughts. When you're fully identified with thoughts, you often don't even realize you're thinking. So I've met people who say, I don't have thoughts. I just don't have them. And I start talking to them, they're like, oh, I guess I do have thoughts, right? So if you're fully identified with thought, you won't even notice it. Which you often notice is like struggle, burnout, being tired, resistance to life. I don't know. But you often don't realize how much thought is actually going on. Now, when you stop engaging thought purposely, stop distracting purposely, stop playing with the phone, stop watching something, stop reading something, you just stop, but you're awake. We could call that meditation, shikantaza, natural meditation. All of a sudden, it's like, whoa, there's a lot of thoughts. That's just disidentification, and that's okay. But that's why I wanted to point out the judgment that says it's getting worse or harder to resist. That's just a judgment. That's just one more thought. It's not harder or easier to resist. There's nothing to resist. You don't need to resist thoughts at all. The fact that that's happening is evidence that you're definitely calming the body mind, and it's okay. And then if you learn to sort of meditate in unbound consciousness, like just check out my consciousness playlist. There's a million approaches to it. If you learn to meditate in unbound consciousness, when your attention just naturally goes into thought and consciousness, it's very easy to be there, stay there in a peaceful way and not getting entangled in thoughts and judgments. That's just a technique, but it's a very profound technique when you haven't been able to do it before. Okay. Cool. Labaina, hi. Nothing resisting except resistance itself. I know, right? Right? Then there is this deep, deep longing. My heart will break and shatter into tiny little pieces. What does it long for? What is longing? How do you know, like, say you're not feeling longing one moment, and then all of a sudden you are feeling longing? What changed? Soren, I've heard you say it's like having a conversation in first person, which it very much feels like. Yeah, right? That's when you're really identified with thought, often. Yeah. Soren, my body got sick with the flu when I got here, and that has slowed everything down, which seems to help. Yeah, it's true, actually. Illness can be surprisingly good at dropping us back into presence or dropping us out of endless distraction, thought identification, struggle, resistance even. Often illness and physical pain and things like that, they bring us face to face with resistance. If we were able to see through the thoughts about it, the interpretations, the frustration, the emotion even, feel a lot of that, but just get right down to it. There's something that's just resisting and saying, no, I don't want this. It's a good space to go to investigate that raw resistance to anything. It comes in forms like, heavy forms like serious illness, things like that, tragedy, but it comes in very minor forms all the time. I see it around me a lot. It's like complaining or people saying that's not acceptable or, that one's actually kind of funny. Like it's just not acceptable, but they're talking about something that already happened. You're simply saying you can't accept what already happened. Well, good luck with that. You're never going to change it, right? These simple things that are often just threaded into the ways we communicate and complain about things and talk about ourselves and believe about life and ourselves. These are a gold mine to investigate and really go, why? Why do I need to resist this? What is the cost? of resisting it, It's huge. It's a huge cost. Can you talk more about the reflective nature of the mind? What is it reflecting? That's the question, isn't it? It's trying to reflect something that's not a thing. I could say that it's trying to reflect the unconditioned. What is the unconditioned? Well, if I give you an answer, it's going to be conceptual. What is the unconditioned? I would say, who are you? That's like an old Zen koan. If you ask me, what is Buddha nature? I'll say, who are you? Or what are you? I mean, like literally, right now, what are you? What is that? What is this? So if you're clear on the fact that what this is really can't be described, certainly can't be encapsulated in words, language is just not suited to address it. And moreover, the apparatus of language is itself already reflective. The reflective nature of mind that's a prerequisite for there even to be language. So there's no way, language is going to deliver the goods to you in what's being reflected. But what you can do is notice the effects of reflection of mind, suffering, mind identification, then to notice the reflective nature itself as what you're taking yourself to be, consciousness, right? And recognize that not conceptually, directly. That's an awakening. Then you have a really good opportunity, as quite natural and spontaneous typically, to start to surmise instinctually what it is that is trying to actually reflect. And your sense gates are your direct access. Okay. Soren says, thanks. You're welcome. Sarah, you're welcome. No energy to even resist. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you get sick enough, that's exactly what happens, really. The body, because resistance is cognitive, ultimately. It feels visceral. It feels very like in the body, but it's ultimately a cognitive process. Or what keeps it, I'll say it this way, what keeps it in perpetuity is a cognitive process. If the cognitive processes of avoidance, identification, constantly reifying a sense of separation all the time, if that stops, then the resistance patterns will sublimate out of the physicality, the energetic body, reasonably quickly. They'll offload because nothing's holding them there anymore. Okay. Lubena said, what changed is the sensation arose, and I have an interpretation about what is. Yeah, that's right. Right. So one moment there's not a sense of longing, and then all of a sudden there is a sense of longing. What really changed, is a sensation arose. That's really what changed. There's a sensation. So can you find the actual sensation that's different? Like if this sensation in the body right now, whatever it is, if it just suddenly wasn't here, then it would almost be as if I rewound the clock to when I wasn't noticing longing, right? And then when you notice that that's what we're calling, labeling, and judging to be longing, it makes it clear, I think it makes it clearer and easier and more accessible to see that even that longing itself, and specifically what you're longing for, whatever that is actually it's an after effect. It's an interpretation of a sensation. But if you can get right down to that sensation, and just stay with it and notice it's either here or it's not, here or it's not. But just because it's here doesn't mean an interpretation is automatic. That's where it starts to break the spell of feeling. Even the interpretation is not a big deal. But with the spell I'm talking about getting broken is going back to the beginning of this talk, and that is the spell that makes everything feel like a unifying experience. You know, and I don't know if I want to say this. I'll say it. You know, sometimes when people talk about unity consciousness or unifying or unity and everything is consciousness, that kind of thing, that does represent an insight. It represents an awakening, actually. But that's exactly what I'm talking about, actually going away in deeper stages of realization. Very obviously. And what I'm talking about here with a specific experience, sensation, judgment, interpretation is all of that doesn't actually matter until it has a framework to attach itself to. That's how we get at this framework. We little by little. So you may deconstruct this one moment of longing in the way we're talking about. And you may not notice any big change in your identity structure or the feeling of you or the feeling of this right now. But you do it enough times and all of a sudden you might find it's just not there anymore. Right? Because this sense of separation, this sense of a separate, distinct self or whatever, let's just call it a unifying experience, that itself stays alive, or it stays apparently alive in what it relates to. It's a relational experience. So it has to have things to relate to. It has to relate to problems. It has to relate to struggles. It has to relate to things that aren't right for it yet, that aren't fixed. I haven't gotten back to my previous awakening. I haven't gotten forward to my next awakening or my whatever, right? Those are all relational. And that relational nature is the feeling of struggle, even though we don't realize it. Sometimes we interpret it as a certain kind of like exuberance, excitement. I'm excited for the future. I'm excited to get what I want. We conveniently overlook how much it sucks when we don't get what we want, or we get exactly what we don't want. But we're just still in the business of wanting and not wanting. That's all related to the unifying experience I'm talking about, the matrix. So deconstructing these little areas, especially if they feel deeply rooted in you or intense or emotionally charged, deconstructing them, investigating them is very valuable. Don't listen to the Neo-Advaita crew out there that says there's no one to do anything. There isn't anyone to do anything, but it doesn't mean we can't talk this way. Investigating those discrete, I'm just going to call them vasanas, or complexes of experience, reaction, whatever, is very valuable. But just know you don't always see the big effect right away. You may see it later. You will see it later. Sometimes you will see it right away. You'll feel something loosen up or just feel like a drop. Other times you won't. But it doesn't mean it's not a valuable thing, because what you're doing is you're severing those relational attachments that keep that solidified illusory experience intact. Okay. Life with Kyle. The unbound conscious meditations are good. Oh, good. It's a subtle type of it's a subtle thing to get across in the way you meditate like that. But once you get it, it's very refreshing, very nice, very peaceful. And the nice thing is, it doesn't matter how many thoughts there are. It's a perfect entry point when there's a lot of thought. Sherry Miller. So is everything we see just a reflection of the unnameable? Well, it really depends on what you mean by seeing. Let's say you're looking at my face, right? You're looking at a monitor right now. You're looking at a bunch of colors, right? What are you actually seeing? I know what your mind will say it's seeing, seeing Angelo, seeing a face, it's seeing a screen. But that's thought. What are you actually seeing? And then a more subtle layer of thought will say, well, I'm seeing a solid object in front of me. Like the light seems to be bouncing off that. It seems like there's something out there. Even if I don't label it, if I was a newborn baby, I would still be seeing something there. Okay. Now now in the same way we noticed that Angelo and face and screen are concepts and thoughts, can you notice that even a thing, even an object that you could reach out and touch, even that is a thought in this moment in comparison to the scene? So now what are you really seeing? Just keep looking. Now you don't need me to tell you this. You can do this all the time. You can do this all day long until you really, really see what's there. When you see what's there, you won't ask the question anymore. You'll be so fascinated by it that everything else will just fade into insignificance. Truly. Cool. Frankie, resistance is refusal to be with what is. Yes. It's refusal to see that what is, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. That's the way I would say it. Because, to be with it, I mean, I guess you could move away from something that's uncomfortable or whatever, but it's really just refusal to accept the fact that it happened and that no amount of thinking or interpretation can change that it happened. If we see that really clearly, it really fixes a lot of mental distraction, because mental distraction becomes unnecessary, superfluous, useless. How much of the shit we talk about and think about have to do with wishing things weren't the way they are? Right? What's the second generation of that? The second generation is hoping they are different in the future, waiting for a peak experience, a meditative experience, waiting for when I get off work so I can go do whatever I want to do, hoping things turn out this way or that way. All of that is just the second step of not accepting what is right now. Wolves in sheep's clothing. You're welcome. Kieran, thank you so much. You're welcome. Oh, I like all the orange hearts. Those are pretty. So glad you're all here. Okay, this is Dane Brown. Hi, Angelo. Just want to say thank you for everything you do and share. You're welcome. I've been watching the last couple of retreat Q&As and getting so much out of them. Good. Those retreat Q&As are so valuable because for a lot of reasons, but I mean, these are extremely sincere people at all stages of realization with all different kinds of experiences, all different makeups of the personality and emotion body, different experience levels with different types of spirituality, some with no particular interest in spirituality as such. So you have this huge volume of different experiences and different types of people, but they're all going through this, they're engaging this process that we all go through, and the insights are reasonably consistent, but you see it from different angles through different people. Also, in those retreats, like, when you're sitting for 2, 3, and 4 days in samadhi, like a lot more comes up, a lot of different types of insights come. The conversations get far more like synchronous and synergistic and so forth. So I think they're hugely valuable, the Q&As. That's what woke me up, is reading back and forth descriptions in Dokusan, which is the Zen Q&A sort of format, but it's one-on-one with a teacher. I was reading the descriptions of that, the conversations recreated in Dokusan in the 3 Pillars of Zen. So the back and forth with Yasutani Roshi, that's what woke me up. All right. Oh, Eric's here. Cool. Hey, Eric. So Eric with Awaken Your Myth. Resistance is a great approach to inquiry. What is this? Yeah, exactly. You can start with like, what am I actually resisting in life? What are my big resistance patterns? Why? You what are my beliefs about it? What are my beliefs about what would happen if I didn't resist that? I've been resisting it all my life. What if I just stopped? I mean, maybe that's the answer. Or, what is the underlying emotional mechanism? What do I not want to feel? And it'll often bring you into the emotion body. And then you can take it deeper, right? What is resistance? When you're feeling intense resistance, just, if you give yourself some space, some time, slow down, stop, and just feel it. Feel it. Feel the sensations. Notice the emotions that might be there. Notice the interpretations, right? What is this really about? What is my story about why I have to resist? And then come back to the sensations. Where is the resistance? Where's the actual resistance? Is it there? Can you find it? It's a wonderful investigation. By the way, Eric from Awaken Your Myth has, I don't know, several months back, he started an Awaken Your Myth workshop program. He can explain it more, but where he works with people who are very much inclined in the way we talk here, along the deep insight, sincerity, authentic living path, but also where that corresponds to the individual, hero's journey. And I'm not the kind of person to talk a lot about manifesting, things like that, because I think it can be really confusing when we talk about that in the same space we talk about awakening for various reasons. But I'll be, totally honest. The reason I can endorse Eric and I can endorse this stuff is because the hero's journey isn't a story, really. We can access it through the story sometimes. Eric may say this totally differently. I don't know if he agrees or not, but we can access it through a storyline, and that may be where we need to start. But what it's really about is archetypes. It's archetypal. It's about truths that are so deep in the human psyche, so deeply rooted that we often can't access them through the mere personal. We have to find out where the personal meets the impersonal. And Jung was beautifully intelligent about all of this, and has such wisdom about it, the archetypes of the collective unconscious. Realization does go beyond human consciousness. Absolutely. No doubt about it. But what holds us up, enlightenment just is. It's already here. It already is the case. So what this business is about is seeing what the obstructions are, right? What are the obstructions? And there are very skillful means, especially when you're working with somebody like Eric, who is deeply insightful, deeply compassionate. This is all very true. He didn't ask me to endorse him or anything. But I'm just telling you, like, I know him personally. He cares about people so much, genuinely cares about people so much. And he also has a lot of insight. He had an awakening. We had a really cool interview about it. You can watch that. And he has a lot of experience in life and in this space. So I'm just delighted for anyone that does that work with him, So if you're struggling with how this awakening process, this unbinding process, how does that meet the relative me? And or if you're simply just having trouble finding your place in the world, having trouble giving yourself full permission to live your deepest truths in the relative world, I would recommend his stuff for sure. He's like probably that I can think of the only sort of I don't know how to say it, but it's not new age what he does. It's not like, law of attraction, manifesting kind of stuff. It's deeply archetypal work. It's powerful work. It's emotional work. but it's also very infused with spiritual and true spiritual insight. And you're just in good hands working with him. So anyway, if anyone's interested in that kind of stuff, definitely check his stuff out. It's Awaken Your Myth, Eric Ireland. Brandon, it sounds like you're already talking about this, but Angelo, could you talk about having one big awakening, little awakenings that seem to culminate over time? The awakening thing is so funny. So what I usually say is, in my experience, most people do have an initial big shift. Big just means, in comparison to anything that came before, and what came before is usually experiential, you can have some pretty trippy, wild and crazy mystical experiences. You can have a sort of pre-taste of awakening where experientially you do feel something more real than real, but it kind of comes and just goes, and you almost feel worse afterward because, like, where the hell did that go? Right? I'm the same. I'm the same suffering guy. I just tasted the Garden of Eden and I was cast out. So those aren't what I'm talking about. But when you have that shift, something literally just changes in what you take yourself to be, an identity. That's a pretty big deal, usually. Now, I can't always say it's the same for everyone, because I have met people who have been in this space so long, for so many years, listened to so many teachers talking about awakening and listening to people talk about it, that when it actually happens, they damn well know something changed in their identity. They know it. And when I talk to them, it's obvious. And yet they're like, yeah, but I didn't have, what those guys were talking about. I didn't have the big this and that. I'm like, it's because those are words, So sometimes people have been so preloaded with preconceptions that they expect some kind of earth-shattering thing that it's not like that. And yet it is earth-shattering because it shatters your, it's person-shattering. It shatters your limited view of yourself. And that's what really matters. So there's a spectrum of the experience of it, but there is typically a first shift in identity from what I see. And rarely, if ever, never is that liberation. I've never seen that convincingly, where there's just a shift and you're just liberated. It's not like that. You can have very deep awakenings, and various aspects of like formlessness and non-duality can stick around even after awakening. But usually there's a pretty intense period of shadow work, integration, call it what you want. And then further insights to come, further direct insights into the nature of appearances, the nature of presence itself. And there often are shifts out of something, not really into something because you've never been out of it, but it's shifts out of something that feels separate, out of something that feels solid. And then naturally what comes forward and just reveals itself obviously is this. So those are deeper insights. And then, as my very initial talk on this recording was kind of talking about, there's a sort of solidifying experience that can still be there even after insights and awakening and all these mystical experiences and all this stuff can happen. There can still be this solidifying experience that you don't even notice. You overlook it until it stops functioning. And then it's just kind of a whole different thing. Very hard to talk about it. So that's very deep stage realization. So that's kind of how I look at it. Now, with that said, I've heard people describe this in so many different ways. I've even heard people say that there's no such thing as awakening, but they seem to talk from a place of like non-doership. So I don't know what that means. Maybe they just don't want to talk about it, but they probably had a shift in experience at some point. Other people, I think, maybe have just learned the terminology. I don't really know. I've heard people talk about having multiple awakenings, like over and over and over and over. I think it depends what you define as an awakening. I've had all kinds of experiential shifts. They still happen. But the profound insights of the awakenings that happened to me years ago haven't gone anywhere. And they're very clear. The relative person can still go through things, it can go through challenges. It can go through releases, all of that. And the clarity that deepens is not so much an insight clarity about realization, because that's very clear. It's more like how that spontaneity, deep peace, and clarity finds itself in more and more subtle human situations. Behavioral things that are just old patterns, belief systems that are just old patterns they just fall away the more and more and more and more. That's how I experience it, and that's kind of how I see it in most people I interact with. But people use different language. They describe things differently. Some people come from different traditions, so they use different terms. In Zen, you might talk about Kensho or Satori. I say awakening. Some people I know call awakening liberation, or they call liberation awakening. So people use all kinds of different terms. So my advice is don't get too bound up in the terminology. It doesn't matter that much. It doesn't matter at all, really. I know many, many people who have had very profound awakenings and didn't know any of this terminology at all and didn't care about it. Really weren't concerned with learning about Buddhism and dogma and doctrine and Pali Canon and, Advaita Vedanta and Hinduism and Christian mysticism. So often it comes later on. You just resonate with certain people and you pick something up, start reading it, and it's just like, boom, the clarity's there. But many people have awakenings with very little knowledge of any of this. So it's not about knowledge. And I've said that a billion times. It's about instinct, trusting your instinct. It's kind of about going off the map a little bit. The socially conditioned map that feels illusory, that feels confining. That's how it felt to me. You got to be willing to go off that map. Even if it's comfortable and familiar, if it feels off to you somehow and something's leading you just deeper into maybe your own instinct, yourself, into this moment, follow that. Follow that rabbit. That's what this is about. Not really about how many awakenings do you have and how does that play out and what are they called, right? All right. Wait, I lost myself here. Okay. Soren said, I was listening to a conversation between Jim Newman and two scientists. He said some brutal and radical pointing. He had some brutal and radical pointing, much similar to Tony Parsons. They were confused, to say the least. Well, of course they were. They're thinking in terms of science. They're thinking in scientific terms. So they're thinking about concepts. Hopefully Jim's not talking about concepts. But I will say this. I like Jim Newman. I like Tony Parsons. But just my opinion, the way that the sort of the uncompromising non-dual message, I don't really think it's uncompromising, and I don't think it's like the most extreme thing out there or something. It kind of sells itself that way. It's direct. It's very direct, and that's true. And there's a place for directness, and I do it myself often, depending on what's going on with somebody. But it can be very miscalibrated. And it can also just become a bunch of words. I think some people actually just learn that and just speak it and haven't had the insight themselves at all. Also, what's behind this that these guys never talk about is the fact that they were seekers and did tons of spiritual practices for decades. So they just don't want to say that. Right? So I don't mean to criticize them, but sometimes they shut people down a little bit too much. People who are having emotional challenges, it can be a little, in my opinion, miscalibrated to just use it as it starts to get rigid when you only talk the same way all the time, And so that's an example of like, if I was going to talk to scientists, I'm not going to use some extreme direct non-dual, non-doership pointing at them if it's not relevant to the conversation. Now, they may have invited him to talk about that stuff, and then so be it. That's what he's going to do, and that's great. That's cool. But sometimes you can misapply that stuff. That's all I want to say about it. And the reason I say that, just so you know, the reason I would even say that out loud or certainly in public like this is because I have known people who, particularly people who tend to disassociate, it can be kind of harmful for them from what they've told me. Like suicidal harmful, things like that. So what's missing there is compassion, in my experience, in that kind of message. Any Zen teacher will tell you this for sure. Listening to that message, they would say, yeah, well, they'd smack Tony in the head and say, well, who's the one that said ouch? Right. So this is a very well-worn spiritual path in Zen. Like they know these pitfalls and so forth. And so yeah, it's powerful. It's a good pointing. It can be really helpful to the right person at the right time, for sure. But I also think it can be too rigid. It's not flexible. So uncompromising is more like inflexible. Yeah, and there's deeper realization. You at some point you will start to open to this infinite flexibility, being freed from delusive hindrance. And Buddhism may be described as freedom from extremes. That's a whole other level of freedom that's not possible with any kind of rigidity at all. So meaning rigidity to the absolute. So that's a fixation in the absolute, or it can be, if you've really identified with that. So where does absolute come into contact with the relative? This is Zen Buddhism is all over this stuff. And many of their koans are very specifically addressing these exact things. So I'm getting into the weeds with teaching and like nuances, but this stuff is publicly available and people get online and YouTube and see all the different stuff. So I just like to give kind of some context for the different ways people teach, and I think the benefits and potential drawbacks. Dr. Heidi Sky, can access the preset easier when my eyes are open. I'm sorry. can access the present easier when my eyes are open and just taking in all the sensory information. When I close my eyes, okay, you ready for this? Dr. Heidi Sky? One adjustment. Try this adjustment. You're a doctor. I don't know if you're a medical doctor. Maybe you're an ophthalmologist, but when you close your eyes, so here's the deal. When you have your eyes open, we can talk like, neurologically. When you have your eyes open, your occipital lobes are just lit up, right? Like so much brain energy is going, oxygen consumption and brain function is going to creating a three-dimensional visual world. A lot has to be added, right? And we know like the thalamus and the occipital lobe, there's information going both ways. So we're actually projecting our own visual experience into our brain and back out and so forth. So it requires a lot of processing to create a three-dimensional world. But here's the thing. The raw sense data that your retinas are taking in right now doesn't actually change when you close your eyes. What does change? The processing changes. Because something in the brain knows when my eyes are closed, I don't have to create a three-dimensional world, so I'm not interested in that. So the default mode network starts up. So all you do is you train yourself to actually see what's right behind your eyelids, which is a bunch of gray and brown shades. The visual stimulus is still there. It's still just as formless. It's just that either through conditioning or maybe genetically, we're programmed to, when we close our eyes, our brain function changes. I think it's beta waves turn into alpha waves or whatever on our EEGs when our eyes are closed. So the brain function significantly changes because we're not doing so much work to create a three-dimensional world. But again, the point is, if you have access to that non-dualistic experience through the sense field, specifically the visual sense field, you can do the same thing with your eyes closed through the just notice. All you have to do is notice the visual stimulus that you're actually seeing in the back of your eyelids. It's just formless. There's not objects that you're labeling and so forth, right? Try that and see how it goes. You might be surprised. Okay, Life with Kyle. Okay, Brandon, would you ever do a book of inquiry or pointers? Yeah. I mean, I did already. A lot of them. There's a lot of pointers in there. Non-dual pointers, yeah. There are some non-dual pointers in my book, by the way. They're just hidden a little bit. I didn't point to them as such. They're Easter eggs. But yeah, I will probably do one for later stages, specifically non-dual. Working with the senses and emotions, yeah. Yeah, I will probably do another one, yeah. Eric says, thank you, my friend. Thank you for all your hard work. Frankie. Yvonne. Hello, everyone. Late to join. Got my timing wrong. Well, I keep hearing that people thought it was going to be later, which means that I could have made a mistake easily. It said start at 2 p.m. Mountain Time, and I think it's 1:25. Okay, yeah, there you go. I did screw it up, so I apologize. What happened today was I told the people who came in early, I have a new camera that you're seeing, digital SLR. I'm using OBS, which is a different platform to actually record and so forth, to stream. So because I've never used all this, I've been learning it. But I thought I was ready, and then I started having glitches this morning. So I wasn't sure if I was going to even be able to go live on time. But then once I went live, people were like, "Hey, you went live too early." So my bad. I'll go after 2 though. I'll keep going for a while because I don't want to mess people up who are going to show up a little later. So Jeff says, when I look for the self, I can never find it. Thoughts arise, hearing happens, but there is no one who it happens to, right? But I still have a felt sense of self and a feeling of separation. Yeah, right. So if you think about things in terms of the fetters, the way Kevin Shanelek describes the fetters, at least, and we have a whole series on my channel you may have seen. Stream entry, which is first fetter, is essentially what you're describing, at least the way he describes it. He would describe stream entry as actually seeing very, very clearly, undoubtedly, that there's no self, that you're not going to find a self, right? And I would say, I might describe it differently, but just to make it clear for this type of question, we'll just call that, the initial realization that there's no self. There's no discrete self. There's no cognitive self. There's no mental self. And I think that's a very important and valuable insight. But that is not the same thing as what I was talking about earlier in this talk, which is when the apparent solidifying element, the apparent unifying element of your experience that can feel like the unity consciousness, it can feel like, you can describe it in all kinds of ways. And it gets more and more expansive, more and more free, more and more direct. But for a long time, it'll still be there until it's not. All of that happens after this first insight we're talking about. So the feeling of being a someone, feeling of being separate, the feeling of being in a body, the feeling of having an inner world, the feeling of there being an external world, all of that can stay there after that initial insight. Now, understand, after that initial insight, you may have moments during meditation where that seems to go away. The sense of an external world may sort of fade away. The sense of universality may just kind of turn into this unbound conscious experience where there's no particular content, but there's a clear awareness, a clear consciousness that's always there. All of that can happen episodically after that first insight. But throughout the rest of the day, you may not really be experiencing non-dual, meaning no separation. And then deeper insights of non-dual, meaning formlessness. Those come later. Okay, that's Jeff's question. What keeps the self-sense alive? That's a really funny question because it's not really there. It's just a sense. So what keeps it alive? Brain processing. Thoughts, really. Deeply held beliefs, but deeply held just means that they are underpinning other mental functions, like the mental function that's constantly believing itself into a three-dimensional world that we were just talking about a few minutes ago with the visual sense fields. So it's really ultimately all belief. It's just this matrix of beliefs or this hierarchy of beliefs. But the deeper beliefs are much harder to dispel through simple inquiry. It takes specific types of inquiry usually, or just time. And breaking through a lot of reactivity and resistance until the mind is calm enough to just see it. Thoughts often start with a feeling that they are mine, but when I look, I can't find a me. Yeah. That's kind of the 5-point approach, or it's a flavor of the 5-point approach I put for self-inquiry in my book, where you just notice, oh yeah, it does feel like it's about me, but there's no me. Now you can keep looking for that. I'm not saying it's not valuable to keep looking if it feels relevant to you to do so. But once you see you're not going to find it, then that's not particularly valuable, usually, in my opinion. You're much better to rest in that I am sense. And the I am sense isn't the same thing as the thought self you're looking for. The I am sense is the sense of the one looking, the sense of the one aware right now, the bare aware one, the bare awareness. That's the I am sense. And you can rest in that. And this is sort of Nisargadatta's instructions, or what his teacher instructed him, and he said it a lot, resting in the I am sense. And at some point, if you regress properly, the I am sense will disappear. So that's his instruction, is rest in that sense. So that's probably, in my opinion, a better approach than to try to keep looking for a self you're not going to find. There are other approaches. That's not the only way to approach this, of course. So if you're talking about the fetters, the way Kevin Shanelek described them in our interviews, then you go sequentially. You go through them. You address reactivity, which is very different than what we're talking about. It's not like looking for a sense of self. It's not doing internal inquiry into consciousness or where the I thought starts or thoughts. It's nothing about that. It's actually looking at your reaction patterns to life itself, to people, situations. So you can start with that, and then you can move on to direct investigation of non-dual filters, basically. I shouldn't say non-dual filters. Direct investigation into the perceptual filters that, when they're constantly activated, it makes things feel dualistic. And the dissolution of those, or the falling of those, or the breaking of that fetter results in realization, non-dual realization. So he does it in a sort of stepwise fashion, and it works for some people for sure. It doesn't work for everybody. Nothing works for everybody, because you got to kind of find your own way. So that's one approach. If you're interested in just going right after the non-dual, I have a whole playlist called Non-Duality, and that's all my videos are doing that, pointing in the sense fields largely. If you're interested in reactivity work, look at my playlist called Equanimity. Life with Kyle. When did liberation happen for you? Years ago. I've heard you say your awakening happened when you were 24. It was not long after that. So for me, awakening happened in like two really big chunks. But I do want to say, it's not like you don't necessarily want this to happen to you. Truly. It's not. I don't think most people would want it like that, because it's very, very destabilizing in a lot of ways. I actually talked to a friend not too long ago who had something similar, and I never knew this about them. I knew them in a little bit of a different setting than this, and not too long ago they explained that this had happened to them as well. And I very much vibed with how it went for her afterwards, because it's like you kind of carry a secret around with you in a way, and you also know people don't necessarily want to know it, not in the way it happened to you. So that was years and years and years ago. But what happens then is the integration process is like a directly energetic one, largely, and a painful one. And it happens after, and it happens ongoing, and it continues. It still continues in a sense. Like I said earlier, what's realized with liberation is that everything is fundamentally, truly, profoundly okay. There's a peace that comes with that that's unshakable, really. But the body-mind has habits. Still, it has habits, it has beliefs, it has tendencies, and those do not go away overnight. And they don't go away in 1 year. They don't go away in 5 years. But they do go away. They get subtler and subtler and subtler. So as you get more and more attuned to subtle fixations, subtle beliefs, subtle movements that are just a little bit out of sync with, let's just say, natural movement, then more and more just keeps falling away. And the result, hopefully, is just moving through life in a more compassionate way, but in a deeply compassionate way, meaning not just from the standpoint of human empathy or even emotional empathy, from a very deep place of where love and emptiness aren't two. And how that will manifest for you or any individual Only no one knows. I didn't know. I had no idea how this would play out. I still don't know. I don't know what'll happen tomorrow, and I don't need to know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't care. But I do see what it's doing. It's clear. It's obvious. It has a cadence to it. It has a transcendent wisdom, a prajna wisdom to it. And it's not personal, and it's nothing about Angelo. It's a local effect. Just as Buddha said when he woke up under the Bodhi tree, that all beings woke up with him. Everything, all beings, all animals, all insects, everything woke up with him at the same time. That's how it is, yeah? So when you wake up to that and you know that, you live that, and yet something in you is out of accord with it, anything in you is out of accord with it, it will feel like a resistance or feel like some kind of pain or something, and it will energetically work itself out one way or another. And that process is very, very intense at first when this happens very fast. When the self-structure drops very early, it's very intense. And there's no mitigating it. Maybe there are somatic modalities and things would have been very helpful for me, but I didn't know about them, and we probably didn't have a lot of them like we do now. But even with that, it's still a very intense and very steep path. So yeah, how it happens for each individual is just right for them. Really, I feel that. Yeah. Kieran, so happy to take more risk. Yeah. Let it do its deepening. Exactly. What do you have to lose? We're all going to die. This is all dust, very short time. So you have this precious few moments on the earth, few moments in this conscious space. What are you going to do with it? Buy more stuff? It can be fun to buy stuff, sure, but the opportunity here is so big. Yeah. And awakening isn't to exclusion of everything else. It's all about priority in my experience. Okay, Sarah. I agree with regards to Jim. Yeah. He seems like a super nice guy. I would actually like to talk to him. Sarah Walker Ting. Seems many tend to fixate on emptiness and leave out the talk on love. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe partially because, well, I think there's a lot of reasons. Some are traditional, have to do with the traditions of Dharma being rather masculine. It's also because it's a big correction. It is very important to realize the empty nature. It's very important to realize transient nature, because a lot of times our holding on and wanting to control and all that is the fixation. That's the struggle. That's the resistance. And that's the suffering. So we have to let go. The letting go has to happen. And so what I think happens is it gets overemphasized, right? Because it's such a stark contrast to all that holding on and grip and control and solidifying our ideas of being human, that we can kind of overcompensate in the other direction. But this whole process is kind of like that. We kind of tend towards the disintegrative, then the integrative, then the disintegrative, and it kind of comes to a nice equilibrium over time, I think. And then they come into complete communion where integration and disintegration aren't two, masculine and feminine aren't two, emptiness and love aren't two. They move as the same everything. Sunrise, flower movement, dog bark, taking one step, swallowing saliva. Okay, Saranish said, hi, everyone. Just rolling in. Hello. Fundamentalism. Wow. I swear I could say that word. Fundamentalism in anything seems an indicator of inflexible beliefs that hurt people. Yeah, I really think that. Fundamentalism, it feels like fixation to me. So it definitely has the potential to cause some kind of harm. Of course, it depends on a lot of things, particularly the emotional setup of the person doing it, how much power they have, and so forth. But it definitely has the potential to cause confusion, to cause potential violence, and so forth. Life with Kyle. Love your talk on Neo Advaita. I think it's right on the money. That's why your work resonated so much when I first found you. No fixation and so accessible. Can really feel the compassion in your work. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely compassion here for... It's funny. I can't pull it apart from the emptiness. I can't pull it apart from that movement of waking up. Like there's nothing more juicy, I guess, in the relative world for me anymore than someone waking up, you know? And all of this is also someone waking up. All these conversations we're having are iterations of it. But when something is just ready to let go of identity and find that which has never been lost, it's just awesome. And it's also the universe singing. It's singing it all the time, in all the sounds and all the sensations. It's right in front of your face the whole time, staring you in the face. But it has no agenda. And so we overlook it because we always have agendas. It's a little bit of a mismatch. It's a silent voice, but it's a very powerful voice. When we start to listen to that powerful voice, it starts to override everything, and we feel it. We feel it in our marrow. We feel the awakening stirring. Yeah. It's so powerful. That's what's interesting to me. And it feels like both love, support, compassion, and it feels like a scalpel and a sword and a flame. But there's a intuitive knowing without thinking of which side of that is most important in a given moment. Because some people are so beaten up by life, they don't need me to sit there and tell them they have no self. They need to develop a sense of self and boundaries because they've just been abused so much. They need to develop a healthy psyche, and then they'll be able to open to deeper truths. Yeah. You know, if you can't see that in somebody, if you can't calibrate that, there may be some inner work you haven't done, you know, in yourself, because that's you staring you in the face, that homeless person, that person that's been massively abused in life, whatever it is, you know, that's you. That is you. It's not like, but for the grace of God, there goes I. It is you. And if you can't feel it, if there's something separating it, and you know, we have to use a spiritual tool or approach to mitigate that pain for ourselves, then we're not feeling their pain with them, and then that's where the compassion comes in. So, all right, Soren, I appreciate your approach. Thank you. Stephanie, hi. Thank you. You're welcome. Ashley, hi, Ashley. Just on lunch? Oh, hey. Hi, welcome. Thank you for coming. Emma Lindsay. Oh, thanks for the info on open, closed eye stuff. It's really good. Yeah. Close our eyes. We still see, but through habit, we'll often go into the thoughts, right? Start engaging thoughts. But you can also just notice all those little points of light. All that beautiful display. Try it with like an abstract painting too. That's why I love abstract so much. When I paint abstract because I love the formlessness of it. I love that it's not an object. There's no label. It's not a thing. It's color. It's pure sensory experience, pure seeing. Just the scene. Okay. Dr. Heidi Sky is back. Wow. Notice what I'm seeing with my eyes closed. Yes. I want to know what kind of doctor you are. Are you a medical doctor? You don't have to tell me, but I'm curious. Ashley. Also, thank you, Angela, for sparking a new passion for me. I've gotten into writing poetry. Yay! I'm so excited for you. I'm sure you're great at it. You're so eloquent at speaking. Ashley has a channel as well. I think on TikTok, Instagram. I can't remember which one. OBS. I know I'm a virgin. I'm just learning it, but it's awesome. It's an amazing program, and it's amazingly free. It's so cool that it's free, but it's very powerful. Just a little bit of a learning curve. Hi, Chris. I'm glad you're here. Jeffrey. What do I mean by samadhi? When I say samadhi, what I'm usually talking about is I'm going to say, I shouldn't say it this way, but I'm going to because I can't think of a better word. It's a manufactured state of clarity. It's a state. It's an experiential state rather than realization. but it's used in a lot of different ways. So don't hold my definition of it. To me, it's, you've been meditating for 3 or 4 or 5, 6 days straight in a retreat. The quality of samadhi gets more profound, more obvious, more salient. It almost becomes a collective samadhi. Jeffrey, I've been meditating since 1968. That's awesome. And there's been what I would call samadhi maybe 5 or 6 times over those years. Huh. Yeah, see, that's the thing, is it's so hard to say what it means, because people have such different meanings for these words. They use them so differently. Very profound, powerful. A couple of those, I was there, and a couple was just nothing, and it was full of sort of something. Yeah, these, if you look at the, I'm not an expert in the jhanas or dhyanas. They are Buddhist approaches that are very specific states of meditative experience that you can enter into. And there's the sort of formed jhanas, and then there's the formless, and they have sort of levels to them. Non-substantial, solid peace and silence. Yeah. Yep. That's beautiful. Practice in meditation is not so. Most of my practice in meditation is not that. Well, that's not a bad thing, right? I mean, whatever's there that needs to be experienced, whatever there's there that needs to be brought up, whether it's thoughts, beliefs, the activity of the mind, the monkey mind, or emotional experiences, it's wonderful that they come up through meditation. We give them opportunity to come to the surface. Gareth, should I set aside time each day to do inquiry, or just do it when it occurs to me? If I'm doing something, the mind says, better find an answer quickly so I can get back to what I'm doing. Oh, I know, right? I would say for you, try it both ways. Why not? What else you got to do? Spend a month where you spend 30 minutes a day doing inquiry consistently. Then spend a month where you just, when you kind of remember to do it or you feel inclined to do it, stop whatever you're doing and just sit there and inquire. Do that for a month and see which one seems to resonate better with you. That's what I would do. Better find an answer quickly so I can get back to what I'm doing. So there's a lot of ways to approach that kind of thing, but a really good entry point for that is the belief is like, it hits me as this, this thing that I'm doing right now for myself, this addressing my deepest yearning, that's not nearly as important as what I've learned is important. All the stuff other people have told me I should be doing, right? That's how it feels to read that. This is for you. This is giving yourself a moment to really investigate what's most important to you in the most direct way possible. Remind yourself of that every time. Give yourself permission to do this. The other angle on that, if you want to investigate it or deconstruct it a bit, is to ask yourself, well, what if I don't get back to what I'm doing? What would be the cost of that? What would be the result? Look into it. What are your beliefs? Like, you might have a belief that says, I'll fail. Well, what if I fail? Oh God, I'm terrified of failing. Or what if a belief says, I won't get enough done? Oh, do I have a belief that I have to get a whole bunch of stuff done in a certain amount of time? Oh, it's time. I feel like I'm living in a prison of time. What would it be like to live outside of time, or to live without referencing time at all? So when those thoughts come, especially when they feel heavy like that, or they come consistently, habitually, sometimes there's something underneath that's really valuable, and it's often something in the emotion spectrum. So you could always ask yourself, well, what would happen if I didn't get back to whatever I was doing? Do you imagine someone getting mad at you? Would it be, I don't know, someone you're around, a boss, a partner, someone, criticizing you because you're not doing what they want you to do? Is it because you imagine when you were a child and someone said, quit daydreaming, or something, right? It could be anything. These are the kind of ways we can look into that, though, and say, why do I have that belief that it's not okay to just meditate right now? It's not okay to just inquire and sit silently and investigate my own deepest truth, Those are some things you can do if you want. Okay. Soren, when I was driving to where I am, it's a 5-hour drive, but it just felt like driving until driving wasn't happening, and I was here. I know, right? That's how this feels to me. That's how it feels to not live in an experience of time, really, is like, it's just like one thing replaces another, but it's not moving on any trajectory. And vast swaths of time can go by. It's like, wait, what happened? I know I was having very direct, intense experience, not intense, but like very absorbed experiences, like very clear, absorbed, direct experiences. But somehow the more direct and absorbed you are into the moment, the less your mind is like recording time or something. I don't know. And then you might look back and it's like, wait, what just happened to the last 4 hours or 4 days? I have to actively look for things happening in time. Yeah. Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't have to anymore. Ashley, destabilizing and disorienting are 2 words of caution I would definitely use. Yeah. Yeah. So, like I said, some people kind of wish, oh, I wish I had this big awakening. It's like, well, maybe, but it can be destabilizing. It can be disorienting too. Jeff said, awesome. Thanks, Angelo. I just started working with Panilla's Fetter Lessons, so it sounds like that's a good track. Yeah, totally. Mallory, hey, Mallory, coming in late. Love you too. Angelo got confused and started 2 hours early for some reason. It's kind of strange. And I think we're supposed to start right now, so I'll keep going for a while. Ashley says, for me, the hardest thing right now is just the amount of energy flowing through the body. Yeah. It's okay, but it's just taking time to get used to. Yeah. Right? It's, it doesn't necessarily seem related, but it is. When we start to break through these beliefs and we break open channels through investigating and feeling emotions directly and dissolving resistance patterns, we're really opening up energetic channels, and all of a sudden this energy starts moving through, and it can come through very intensely. It tends to regulate itself over time or come to an equilibrium. But yeah, it can be like a lot. I love your instinct though, Ashley, that it's okay, that it's normal, it's natural, because it is, but yeah, it can be a lot. Okay. Soren, it's the same with me being sick. Even though I use the word, there isn't a sense of me being sick. Yeah, exactly. I know exactly what you mean. It's more like a conventional term that I could use to communicate something, but I can't find it. I can't find sickness or pain. If you look closely at something that's the mind is saying pain, there's a quality of experience, something there, but it certainly doesn't have a label or a name or a story, even a location. The body is, and I just happen to be in it. Not much Velcro for things to stick to, I guess. Yeah. So is there a body? What is your experience of body? I might look into that. Like, what is your experience of body right now, outside of thought? Sarah. Hey, Sarah. I've heard you mention that there's a knowing when you've had an awakening. Yeah. Is there ever a brain-body connect where body says yes and brain says not so sure? Yeah, I think that might be one way of saying it on occasion. It's usually pretty obvious, but there can still. So here's the thing. One of the biggest barriers to just letting go enough so that awakeness just presents itself because it's already here. One of the biggest barriers to that is doubt. Because doubts keep grabbing our attention. Oh, I don't know. Oh, I don't, maybe not, And so what happens often is we finally go, wait a minute, that's just another damn thought. That doubt is just another thought. And over and over and over until all of a sudden it's not sticky anymore. And we just kind of move beyond the realm of doubt. And just moving beyond the realm of doubt, something changes often. Something just literally lets go. So on the other side of that, if we call that an awakening, right? On the other side of that, usually people will say something like, yeah, the doubts can still come, and I can even, they can grab my attention for a moment, but I see them as doubts. I see them as thoughts. What was realized is not gone anywhere very, very clearly. That's usually how people might describe it after awakening. They still have doubts, but their relationship with doubt is very different. I don't know if that's your experience, but that's how I might say it. Oh, cool. Chiropractor and neuroendocrinology. Nice. That's Dr. Heidi Sky. I was talking to her earlier about visual stuff. Ooh La La says, my notice said this would start at 2 p.m. Mountain Time. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I'm a goofball. I started early, but I will stay longer because, I'm that kind of guy. Yeah, I started 2 hours ago. I got confused. I remember now that I've heard it a bunch of times. I vaguely remember it being 2. Basically, what happened was I got totally sidetracked because I'm using a different camera, as you can probably tell. It's a much nicer camera, but that requires me to use OBS, which is a very powerful and very commonly used software for streaming. But I was working on the camera and OBS and the technical stuff and the hardware and software, and I got so sidetracked with all of it. And then I got glitch, like I was having glitches I couldn't figure out. So I'm like, shoot, I might not be able to go live on time. And then ultimately I just went live, but it was 2 hours early. Sorry about that. Okay, let's see. Marvin. Oh, I think it's the only time I've really done this though. So I don't know what happened before, but the only time I've gone live 2 hours early was this time that I remember. I'm usually pretty good about being on time with lives. Okay, Jenny. I'm new to Q&A and to YouTube. Do you see the participants like Zoom? I don't see you. I just see your cool little blue picture there, but I only see what you type in this, whatever you call it. So you can just type questions here if you want. Life with Kyle. Speaking of jhanas, Dan Ingram is an expert on those. Yeah. I haven't interviewed Dan. It's very strange. I've touched base with Dan a couple times. One time we were going to, and something happened with his schedule and my schedule. I can't remember. And then I was going to invite him again, but then I got busy. So I will definitely interview Dan or talk with Dan at some point in the future. He wrote a book called Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha, if you're interested. Someone mentioned Facebook. Yeah, there's also a Simply Always Awake on Facebook if you want. I post memes on there. I post videos and stuff. You can always check that out. It's kind of fun. Yeah, you put your questions here. It's all in the chat. All my questions are coming from the chat. Right where you're typing right now. Okay, let's see. Ryan, for some people, do layers of identity need to be peeled off before awakening can happen? Okay, if I'm going to use the term identity, I'm going to say no, because you don't really have layers of identity peeling off, because the first layer of identity that peels off is the awakening. More broadly, what I think you're asking and what I'll answer is, you're only ready when you're ready. And what I really think actually happens, it seems like, is sometimes you're just really quite hypnotized with the dream of your life. And then when you hear something, someone passes you Eckhart Tolle's book and you read it and you go, that doesn't make any sense, but there's a little glimmer of something there. Or maybe you just have a sort of spiritual experience that lasts a short time out of the blue. And then you go, oh, that was cool. And then you kind of forget about it and you just go on about your life. I think sometimes people are just hypnotized. I think this was me too. You're just hypnotized by the dream of me and my life and all of it, and not really clear. And you're so mind identified, you're not really clear that it's actually really uncomfortable. And so you get a taste maybe, or you get a glimmer based on a book or interacting with someone or an experience or whatever. And it kind of has to germinate for months or a couple years or something. And then often there'll be an event, something that's kind of tragic or something that breaks your heart, or you just suddenly go, you know what? I do suffer a lot. I think a lot of people take psychedelics and it happens. You have some cool mystical experience, and then later on a lot of shadow stuff comes. That's another opening. And then you start really going, wait a minute, what's with all the suffering? So I'm not sure if there's a specific type of work anyone needs to do or something they need to shed before awakening. I just think the hypnosis of mind identification can be pretty solid for a while. And then usually something needs to break that enough to see that it's not all fun and games. It's actually a lot of suffering underneath it. And once that's seen, then we start kind of sniffing around. Then we might have a bigger opening or something, or we just become interested in Buddhism or non-duality or whatever. Or read Eckhart Tolle's book like 5 more times. It's a great book. If anyone here has not read The Power of Now, tell me. Because if you haven't, it's the number 1 recommendation I would tell you. Probably even before my book. It's really good. Soren, I blame you and Josh for losing my time. I think Josh and I were just talking about time like, I think, we did a video about it. It's a great topic. It's really a great exploration. If you just are interested and fascinated by time and the illusion of time, you can inquire into that illusion immediately at any given moment, like right now. Like if you believe there's time right now, I would say, well, where's your evidence for that? Oh, well, I remember what happened this morning when I was driving my car. Oh, really? So an image in the mind pictured you driving your car, and you think that happened some other time. Okay, well, without that image, where is that? Even with that image, where is that? Can you access it? Are you suddenly in that car? No. So you can't even know if that happened. In the same way, you can imagine a penguin walking across your floor right now. Let's say you can imagine a penguin walking across your floor an hour ago. Does it mean it happened? Does it suddenly create that reality in your 3-dimensional visual experience? No. So what do we know about time, really? The past? The only evidence we have for a past is memories. The only evidence we have for a future is even funnier, because it's really just repackaged memories and rearranged in a way that some kind of funny thought, standing wave of thought called the will, thinks it can make the future into something. And so it rearranges what we call memories, other thoughts, and turns them into this thing called the future. You've damn well never experienced the future. And yet we think all day long as if we live in that timeline. You can just keep inquiring that way over and over and over until you break the spell. Jenny, I'm currently in the south of Israel. Oh my gosh. How do I navigate this as an awakening individual? It began 14 days ago. Does this mean that all the massacre and bloodshed that happened is just a thought? I wouldn't say that. When you're sitting in your own space, if you have, I don't know what your situation is right now. If you have time, if you have, the opportunity to sit quietly, then any image that's arising in your mind is a thought, no matter what it's about. The image in your mind is a thought. That's the key. That's the point. The narrative in the mind is a thought. Yeah. If you're in that war zone, if you're in those areas, and you hear the gunshots and you see the movement, the bloodshed, you see all that. That's not a thought. That's a direct experience. Yeah. Also, these moments, as tragic as they are, and I know everybody here, and myself included, hopes this ends peacefully sooner than later, for all involved. And there's justice for those, for the violent actors or whatever. What can we do about this? What can we do about this violence? And now it's in your neighborhood, right? Tomorrow could be in my neighborhood. And there are other neighborhoods, countries, places where it's just ongoing, right? What can we do about this? Well, one thing we can't do is we can't change the fact that the world is the way it is. You know, in the immediate, you know, if we're in these neighborhoods and, you know, we can do what we need to do to keep our families safe. And we will just automatically do that. We'll do the best we can to get ourselves into a safer area, to protect ourselves as needed. We'll do what we have to do. But short of being in those direct situations right in this moment, what can we do about the fact that we live in a world that is violent in a lot of ways? It's not all of that's happening in the world. It's not only violence, but there's a lot of it, right? And the truth is, I can't stop that just because I don't want it to be that way. And that's a hard pill to swallow, right? It's a hard thing to actually come into contact with. But is it not true? You know? I can't snap my fingers and make this not be the case. So what can I do? I can feel what there is to feel in myself right now. I can feel any emotions associated with this. Compassion, fear, anger, right? And in doing this, a few things happen. One is we reach a sort of equilibrium in a way, or we move toward an equilibrium with our environment, with our body, our environment, our loved ones, and the whole world. And that's important. Another thing that we do, though, is we see that we have a little more understanding into the actors in these situations. You know, we see that, man, if that person, you know, is carrying the rifle or burning the building, whatever, if they were able to contact themselves in the way I can contact myself right now, maybe it would be different. You know, I can't change that for them, but I can know in myself that I can change it for me. And in small ways, I've reduced the amount of violence I perpetrate. And that may not sound like much. And in comparison to these dramatic situations, it's not much maybe in the relative. But it's a huge act of compassion in the fact that when you see it clearly, it's all you can really do. All you can really do is surrender to your experience right now. And the more you're able to do that, the deeper that insight goes, the more profound that effect is on yourself, your loved ones, anyone you come into contact with, and the general energetic field around you, and the wider energetic field of human consciousness. So the depth to which you're willing to take this is really, in my experience, where the rubber meets the road when we talk about doing something about violence and unconsciousness. It's just not the way the mind wants it. The mind wants to make that situation happening right now just stop happening. Wants to avoid it, wants to pretend it's not there, wants to do something about it, wants to fight back. But none of those change the fact that it's happening. And other violent things will continue to happen in the world that we live in. So that's my best answer. And my heart goes out to everyone in those situations, and you and your family and friends and loved ones. I really hope for a speedy resolution. You know, it sounds very complicated, and I'm not sure that's going to happen, but I just hope it does. Gerald. For an easily distracted and forgetful mind, what would be a simple instruction to write on a Post-it to easily bring back into presence during a workday? My mind just coming up with funny answers like, don't do a Post-it note. Put a sharp tack in your bottom of your shoe. Then you can't forget it. You can't forget it's there, right? Because it hurts so bad all the time. Maybe not a Post-it note, because I feel like you just kind of overlook it, but maybe set it like an alarm on your phone, and like once every couple hours it just goes off and you take 2 minutes to sit, you know, something like that. Something that definitely will catch your attention. Or you can just ask yourself questions like, what is time? What is my sense of I right now? What is my sense of self right now in this immediate? You know, like if your alarm goes off on your phone, that's the name of the alarm, or that's you remind yourself to ask that specific question. Try a different question each day, you know, just ask the question for a couple minutes. And if you do it, I think periodically, sometimes you'll start to carry that question with you, where you almost don't even have to think about it. It's just kind of there in the background. That's how these inquiries go when they start to really take off, when they start to really get sea legs, so to speak. It starts to feel like it's kind of there all the time, and you can carry it off into sleep. But experiment to find the question that works for you, because my question doesn't matter to you. Your question is what matters. So try different ones. Okay, someone said this won't let me chat, but the fact that I'm reading it is proof that it does. So you can chat. Mallory says the camera looks great. Thank you. I've been waiting to do something different because what I was using before wasn't awesome. But the camera, this is a nice camera. So, which time zone am I in today? Mountain time. Soren. Right now, there is some kind of sense of a body, but I recognize it as also just a thought. I feel some subtle identification, which are also just thoughts. I will look deeper. Yeah, that's exactly it. You know, look up. Do you see a body? Like, is the body there? Look down. Is the body there? What changed? Right? What changed in the mind? What changed in the visual experience? Just keep looking in subtler and subtler ways. So Marcy said this won't let me chat, but I can read it. So if you want to put a question. Life with Kyle. Dan's book is fascinating. This is Daniel Ingram's book, Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha. Much more intellectual and map-focused than yours, but interesting and helpful. Yeah, good. I've never read it, but that's great. Lisette Paris. This is totally random, but do you enjoy cooking? I used to cook all the time, you know, had a bunch of people to cook for. Now I don't really, so I don't cook much. But I really did enjoy cooking, and I got pretty good at it. I'm still pretty good at it. I can probably cook a lot of things without thinking about it, the recipe. I don't have to look up recipes, but I'm probably rusty compared to what I used to be. I love cooking because you kind of use all the senses. Like I learned to use spice by smell. I don't think I read that anywhere, but I just learned because I didn't know how to spice food when I was younger, and over time I learned how to spice without overspicing, and so I learned to do it by smell. Okay, Marcy said, well, that worked. So now here's my question. I realized this morning I have been trying to jump over the I to the no I. Can you talk about this? Who's jumping? Who's trying to jump? That's where I want you to go. That's where I want you to stay because you've never left there. Who's listening to this right now? Who's interpreting what's being said? If the thoughts completely stop, who's that right there? And I don't mean who is it, like think about who it is. I don't want you to think about this. I mean, stop right there. Just stop. It's all about stop. The one that's looking, the one that thinks it's leaping over an I, the one that thinks it's looking for no I. What is its nature when it's not thinking? When there's nothing reflecting back into it, saying I this, I that, I did this, I didn't do that. What is that back into which it can reflect, or not? It doesn't have to reflect back into that for the back into that to be what it is. It's pure receptivity. There's something there, right there in the center of you that's pure receptivity. What's looking right through those eyes, hearing these words, but it's not the words aren't changing it. What's coming in through the eyes aren't changing it. What you are is unchangeable. The thoughts moving through don't change it at all. That's why we overlook it. That's why thoughts are easy to help overlook this immediate, simple experience. Because it gives you something seemingly to like cling on to. It seems like it's out there to the next thought, to the next thought. So just stop all that. Just rest in the sense of I am. Rest in the sense of being, purely being awake, purely being present, purely being conscious right now. Tell me how that works for you. Or just keep doing it and don't say anything. Sarah, more awakening clarification. I've had a clear perceptual shift. Try inquiry, and it's like I can't watch the watcher anymore. Cool. If that makes sense. Things just feel different, but no pink cloud. That's great. I don't know what the hell a pink cloud is. I've never seen a pink cloud. Genuinely, I don't even know what that means. But that sounds very clear to me. So that clarity that's there, why can't you watch the watcher? What is a watcher, right? There's something that's just there. What I was saying to the previous questioner. And you know it. You are it. It is it. It is this. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Stay with that. Let it just take you deeper into insight. But don't keep track. Don't manage and don't take notes. Intense emotion, tears, yep. Is there a correlation between the level of suffering prior to awakening and how dramatic the shift feels? I don't know. Yeah, probably, but who cares? For you, it doesn't matter now, right? Don't worry about it. Don't try to figure it out. Like, there's nothing to figure out here for you anymore. So it's just a tendency of the mind to try to, like, think before or after, compare to others. Every other awakened person in the world doesn't matter at all to you now, because you have this, right? You know that this is already here. Rest in it. Just let it take you deeper. Give yourself space with it. Meaning, practically speaking. Don't cling to those thoughts at all. Sherry, loved that video with Josh about time. Oh yeah, that was fun. Ryan, I recently had a kind of opening, and then 2 days later, as I was waking up in the morning, I had 2 moments where everything looked and felt very different. Were those likely glimpses of awakening? Yeah, or whatever this kind of opening was the awakening. It's a little hard to say. It all sounds pretty authentic, though. Don't make too much notes about this stuff. Again, we're concerned with what's here right now. Nothing else. Nothing I said in the past, nothing anyone else has said in the past, nothing you're remembering about your past. We're just not concerned with that. That's the genius of this. It's immediately, imminently present, always available now. Super simple. Nothing to say about it. I can't say anything about it, so I wouldn't expect you to. So don't. Just this. Life with Kyle. I haven't read Eckhart's book. Oh my gosh. I put out a challenge a little while ago if anyone wasn't listening. Has anyone not read Eckhart Tolle's book? Power of Now. It's really good. Yeah. Tolle, if you read my book and you liked it, I think you'll like Tolle's book. It's just very different feel to it. He just has a really nice clarity that's, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a poetic, very simple, very available, but definitely potent way of writing. And it feels like water. Like the whole thing just feels like one watery ocean of words or something. I don't know, but it transmits. It's very powerful. It's really nice. Jenny, 4 days ago. Cool. Oh wait, I'm sorry. What are you talking about? Was that when you had a shift, or am I talking about something else? I think I lost track of the conversation. Sorry, Jenny. I'm not sure what you're saying. Lisette. Definitely have a conflicting relationship with time, right? Time feels like such a prison when we believe in it. Oh, I only have so many hours of the day. I got to do this. I got to do that. It's so suffocating. And it's all thought. Jenny, oh my gosh, were you talking about something that happened? I got to scroll back. Oh, yeah. You were talking about Israel. Okay, where are we? Sarah, I can feel your words. Yeah, but some of my words you're feeling, though. I mean, the words are part of it, right? They're part of the totality of your experience, but what you're feeling is the totality of experience. And if you take the totality of experience right now and you break it down into a bunch of sounds and sensations and thoughts, and you could name all of those, or you can just notice what makes it possible to experience it at all, which is all of it. It's all experiencing itself in one sense. So we don't have to keep track of anything. We don't have to keep track of parts, labels, conditions, before, after, coming, going. It's just this totality of experience and the experiencingness of it, the knowingness of it, period. Knowing before there's something known, knowing before there's an object of thought, knowing before there's an evaluation, knowing of just being aware. That's it. It's like a crystal, like a purely transparent crystal through which anything can be transmitted like a thought, but it doesn't change the nature of the crystal because it's just clear, clarity of consciousness. Mallory says, questions seem to fall away. Yeah, totally. I know what you mean. That's good. What that means is you're not trying to conceptualize, right? The mind could come up with some question like, oh, what about this? But your instinct knows that's not really, not that I'm not criticizing questions in general. I'm just saying in this moment, answering her question, yeah, like question could pop up and all of a sudden it's like, yeah, but that's not it. It's because what you want is what's already here. What you want to deepen into is just beyond words. It's not a thought. It's nothing I can give you because you already have it. It's nothing you're apart from. It's nothing you can find. This is also, man, this is one of the biggest, I don't know, conundrums of awakening. There's nothing you can find. You can't find what you haven't lost. You can't enter a room you've never left. You can't find what you've never lost. You can't discover what's never been covered up. You can't discover what's never been hidden. You can't discover what's never been obscured. Oh, Jenny, sorry. I apologize. What happens is I get so many questions and I forget who I was answering 4 days ago. All right, Paul. You mentioned using moo rather than who am I if you're an intellectual type. Basic instructions for working with moo. You know what? There's the book that worked for me, 3 Pillars of Zen. There's a chapter called, I think it's called Private Interviews with a Zen Master, but it's about Dokusan. And the teacher, who's Yasutani Roshi, talking to the students working directly on moo, and he goes back and forth with them. But ultimately, it's a matter of asking, what is moo? Jenny said, what does moo mean? Well, you don't want to know what it means because that's not what matters. Because if you say what it means, then it means, if I said moo means XYZ, then that's a concept, right? So what you want to know is what it actually is. But what is it? So you can ask yourself, what is moo? What is it? And then you have to recognize every time a thought comes, that's not it. Usually you'd have to go in and talk to the Zen master and they'd tell you that's not it. That's conceptual. Go back and sit down and bring me moo. So you go back and sit down and you go, moo, what the hell is moo? And your mind will say, oh, it's the universe. It's everything. It's nothing. It's, enlightenment, whatever. And you're, no, those are thoughts though. Thoughts. Okay. Well, what is it then? If it's not a thought and all these people are certain that they know what it is, the teacher is absolutely certain that I can discover it. What is it? What is moo? Until there's at first it might feel a little mechanical until you really start realizing it's not a thought, but there's damn well an answer to it. Promise you that. So then, well, what is it then? The curiosity comes and it starts to carry that question deeper. What is it? What is it? What could it be? Start looking around in your experience, but not in thoughts. And if you're like, oh, okay, maybe I'm looking into the sounds. Oh, that's another thought. Like I'm talking to myself. That's not it. So what the hell is moo? What is moo? You know? And then at some point it's just moo. You can just sort of tune your attention right to moo. You don't even have to ask the question anymore because it's implicit already. You've already digested that it is a question. It's a deep yearning, you know? And then this is over time usually. And then you just don't separate yourself from it at all. Moo, just moo. Nothing more, nothing less. Nothing apart from it at all. You merge with it. That's it. But do check out that chapter, 3 Pillars of Zen by Philip Kapleau. That's how I figured it out that way. I read the chapter and I was like, oh, okay. Okay, where we go? Okay, I skipped Ryan's question. Let's check out Ryan's question here. Do some people need to break their addiction to thought or at least weaken it before they can wake up? Do some people? Well, some people do, yeah. I mean, I can say anything's true for some people. But there's no every people with this because some people really just wake up. Like randomly, it just happens. They just have some shift in identity. Some people, it doesn't take much. You know, what it really takes is suffering, I think. Like I said earlier, it takes knowingly suffering and realizing it's just something you're doing in your mind. There's something about thought, maybe. I don't know. Suffering. Recognizing of suffering is really, I think, the prerequisite. The addiction to thought is it's kind of like I said earlier, you're just kind of hypnotized by thought. And, you know, life feels good. I got it figured out. I know where I'm going. Do you need to break that? It helps, but it's not absolutely necessary. If there's a deeper yearning in you to know a deeper truth beyond thought, beyond the cognitive world, even if the thoughts are very frequent, and they always will be until awakening, you know, and even after awakening for a long time. So there's no necessary thing to do before awakening other than get in touch with your deepest yearning, your deepest truth. And it may feel like something different than you've ever heard from me. It may feel like something different than you've heard from anyone else. It may feel like, oh, okay, I see what he's talking about now, but it's not what I thought he was talking about because it's actually me that he's talking about. He's telling me to turn back to myself. And then all of a sudden once you turn back, it doesn't matter what I've ever said. You know where to go. That's what it really takes, is this genuine curiosity to go turn inward to your true nature. And that can arise before, with, or after our recognition of suffering. A Zen bitch slap. That's Paul Hederman. Jenny, yeah, I can accept that this is what is happening. I just can't bypass the anxiety. Exactly. You got to feel the emotions. And with anxiety, you know, you can kind of feel the physical component of it. And you can feel, you know, notice the mental, the thought-based parts of it. And sometimes you might be able to actually feel in and it's like, is there other emotions here? Because a lot of times anxiety is a placeholder for other emotions, just like depression is. What are the other emotions there? You know, maybe more like direct fear, or maybe more like some grief. There may or may not be those, you know, accessible, but it's worth investigating. Lori, sometimes just the act of seeing is pure joy, isn't it? Isn't it great? It's like, how enjoyable to be able to experience anything at all. watch a child, watch it like a toddler, or even a newborn, really. There's just that wonder of experience. But toddlers, they're so curious about every little simple thing, They don't make distinctions between this is important and that's not important to me. This is, they just, whatever they have their hands on, whatever they're seeing and engaging is so absolutely fascinating. Just so beautiful. Hey, Cleo. She was just laying next to me this whole time. All right. Sarah. She was talking to someone else. Ryan. I already looked at that one. Marcy said, my response landed, thanks. Other question, the paradox of uncompromising message being true, while at the same time, you got to do the work. Well, here's the thing. The uncompromising message, I would tell you this for sure. If you're carrying that with you as a belief or thought, that's not the point. It's a very direct transmission. So if it has an effect in the moment, it breaks you open, that's great. But don't believe it, right? Hopefully those guys don't even believe it. I don't believe anything I say. So these are just words, right? So so the work will come to you. Now, if the work is coming to you, intense emotions, resistance patterns, or someone else is telling you like, hey, I don't know, some feedback that you need to hear, then to tell yourself, oh, well, there's no one to do that. The uncompromising method. If you're telling yourself that, that's way off base, probably. You know what I mean? Sarah, thank you. You're welcome. Okay. Here we go. I skipped down and skipped back up somehow. Bob. For me, the beauty of what is moo is that my mind has no idea what to do with it. Exactly. That's not the answer, by the way, but that's a really important step. To see that there's no mental answer, you have an opportunity to get even more curious about what the heck it is, right? Because it can be realized, not understood. Sarah, pink cloud is a recovery term used for the period of bliss after getting sober. Oh, okay. I hadn't heard that one. Bob, other inquiry questions spawned thoughts and concepts. Yeah, use what works. I agree with you, and that's exactly why they use moo as the most common initial koan in Renzai Zen. True School. Everything is reactivity now. Feels like being possessed and knowing that it's not real, but yet it's here. Nothing to do but observe the movement. Observation is helpful, but if you're talking about reactivity, you can definitely check out my equanimity playlist. I have a lot of pointers and approaches and inquiries around reactivity that may be very helpful. Okay. Ryan said, thanks, Mallory, for directing me back upward. I lose Cleo Cam. Yeah, she's so sweet. She's back asleep. She's so cute. When repressed emotions and shadow material start coming up, can they come up during dreams and turn them into nightmares? Oh, for sure. For sure. All kinds of repressed stuff comes up during dreams. Oh, if someone put a Kimura sticker there, I love it. All kinds of repressed stuff will come up during dreams. It's such a good time to... I'm going to give some Kimuras here. Yeah. Yep, the sleep is such a great access point to the unconscious. Moo is moo. Holy shit. Right? Moo, just moo. Let it destroy you, Michael. Love it. Love it. Don't separate yourself at all from it. Any other questions? I have a little time left. I started 2 hours early because I'm nuts. And so I committed to going longer. So I'll go till 3, which is another 15 minutes or so. And thank you all for your support. Love it. I appreciate it so much. I guess I told more of the founders this, but like I haven't taken any money personally out of this business at all, out of Simply Always Awake. I use it to, well, first of all, it wasn't profitable for a long time for various reasons, renting spaces for retreats and all that. But it has income now. So what I try to do, first of all, I donate all of every month's income from ad revenue, which is the automatic income you get from videos. I donate all of that to charity every month, as you all probably know, and every month it's a different charity. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 months worth of income to a certain charity, and I always make a video about it. So I do that, and then the other things I use it for are the contest, equipment like the camera. Next week I'm filming a movie with a bunch of people you know and love, like Alma and Ishwar and Violet and Josh and a few people you may not know. Mark, you do know. So there's gonna be a documentary movie, and that's gonna cost some money to film that, and I'll get it released on the channel. Probably not in the near future, because after filming, there's going to be a long editing cycle. So, and I don't know how to do that yet. I'll have to figure all the editing out. And if anyone knows like higher echelon editors or is interested themselves or something, let me know. The guy who's filming it, he has a lot of experience and he can edit, and he may, but I have to look at his style. And I really want to find someone who I really like their editing style, because editing is everything when you talk about a documentary. So anyway, need an editor. But that's a little bit down the road to look at that. So yep, doing that. We have retreats coming up, as I mentioned at the very beginning. You know, anyone watching this back will know that. But if you don't know about the poetry contest, check out my video. You can just search poetry on my channel, and you'll find the one that says win some art by submitting your poem. And this is very valuable art you can win. And it's original art. So we've got the poetry contest, and we got 2 retreats coming up. One is in November in Art of Living, and that's my traditional retreat, very much a sort of meditative retreat. And then there is the retreat in Kentucky in the spring in May, which is multimodality. The crew from the work, including the executive producer, James McCleary, are going to be there. You're going to go through their workshop, deep emotion work with these guys who are amazing at it. A lot of other facilitators. It's going to be a blast. So those are some of the things we got coming up. Speak to Frank Yang or Matt Garrett. Their editing is amazing. Oh, that's a good point. I could ask Matt. I have to look at Frank's. I like Frank's stuff, but it looks a little more like videography and psychedelic. But yeah, maybe. I don't know if he wants to even do that kind of thing for a living. It'll be a time intensive thing for someone who's a professional editor. But yeah. What do we got here? So my question was really with often said, there is no one doing anything. Call that whatever it is. And yet you need to try to see what is true, no matter if someone is there or no. Okay, so here's the thing with that. If you're talking about non-doership, right? To believe in non-doership is completely useless and potentially counterproductive. And again, with the what do you call it? The Neo-Advaita, or uncompromising non-dual message, that's very much what they highlight. They highlight the non-doership aspect, very much so, in that message. With realization, at some point you will realize non-doership. It just becomes very obvious. But before that, before the realization dawns, to believe it is not helpful at all. And it can be counterproductive, because if you have a tendency toward avoidance or a tendency toward disassociation, you can actually use it to justify not looking at things you probably should be looking at, not doing work you probably should be doing, emotion work, taking responsibility for various things and so forth. Now, that's not everybody, but some people have the challenges around that, right? So Cleo's like, hey, it is time to go do something. I know, baby. You're up and awake and around, and go play. So that's the key, is don't reify that as a mental construct. Very important. If you realize it, it'll be obvious. Before that, do the work. Really, And what I said before is true. The message like that, when I speak directly, there's nothing to do, there's no one, that kind of thing. And I do have very direct pointing like that. That's for the moment only. I mean, I really mean that. It's a direct transmission right now, and it may have an effect, and it may even have an effect later. But if you're thinking about it, if you carry that into other moments, you're thinking about it and you apply it to your own, justification about things and stuff, that's not what it's meant for, and not the way I use it. So both my previous answer and this one, but thanks for clarifying. Okay, what else? Non-doership is so confusing. Yeah, it's totally confusing until it's not. When it lands, it's like, oh my God, how did I ever see it the other way? But before that, the mind won't be able to get anything out of it, and it's not helpful. It's not helpful to think about it, really, unless you really inquire into where the doer is or something in real time. You could do that if that sounds interesting, but you certainly don't have to. Kieran, love these Q&As. Thanks for coming. Hey, Bob. Is retreat in Kentucky is not full yet. I think there's like maybe 10 spaces left out of 100. We're limited to 100. It will fill, but it's not quite full. You're welcome. Saranish, you're welcome. Hey, Amanda. Nice to see you. Thanks for your comments, Mallory. Always nice to hear from you. Stephanie, every time an emotion comes up, I need to do inquiry to find the hidden belief that is causing the emotion. No, not necessarily. Not at all. If an emotion comes up, primarily feel it. If it's unclear what it is, like if it's just this stuck feeling, muddy, you can ask yourself, what am I feeling? Sometimes just inquiring into what actual emotions you're feeling can be helpful. You might be like, oh man, I'm feeling grief, I'm feeling resentment, whatever. So, and sometimes you're feeling more than one thing. So I think inquiring into what the emotion actually is, if it's not clear, can be helpful. But once you're feeling it directly, if you're just feeling just overwhelming sadness, then feel it. That's it. That's the most valuable thing you can do. The beliefs are more like what keeps us from feeling sometimes, they put us in narratives. Okay. Lisa B, I really appreciate all the time you put into this work. Oh, I'm glad you appreciate it. I enjoy putting the time in. It's interesting. It's an interesting challenge, time management. I've always had to work at time management because I do a lot, but this is interesting because it keeps morphing a little bit into like the size of projects I'm doing and how I do things, but I absolutely love this kind of stuff, and directly interacting with people in retreats, like that's not going to change because I just love doing it. Soren, you're welcome. Good night. Eva, hi. You're welcome. Nice to hear from you, Eva. Janelle, you're very welcome. Jenny, you're welcome. Good luck, Jenny. We're all with you. Brandon, how do I begin to stop doubting so much? Just see each doubt as a thought. Just one at a time, very gently, very simply. Notice how that tinge of doubt, that tinge of saying, oh, I don't know, or self-doubt, notice how that catches your attention. And just recognize, oh, that's a thought. That's just one thought right now. What's just beyond that? What if I let go of that one thought? Then what? You might notice that you want to grab onto doubts, right? Because if you don't, who are you in this moment, right? You may be so used to doubting that it feels exceedingly uncomfortable to not doubt for too long. But go through that discomfort and see what's on the other side of it. Ryan, we often talk about the now, but should we talk more about the here and now? Are places I'm not experiencing just as imaginary as times I'm not experiencing? To see that other places and times are not, they're illusory, you have to actually see that here and now are also illusory. Like it says at the very end of the most amazing liturgy probably I've ever read is the Affirming Faith in Mind. It says, for here there is no yesterday, no tomorrow, no today. Okay, Carrie, you're welcome. Brandon. So basically, always in unbound consciousness, or I can access it for 1 year. That's great. When I look, I don't really find anyone anymore, but sometimes do. So I would work, if you want to, like on the non-dual playlist. Start working in the sense fields. Michael, this might help a few out there. I found Killaby inquiries to be very helpful for emotion repression work. The founder, Scott, well, I lost it. The founder, Scott, has a YouTube channel. Yeah. A lot of people like his stuff. Marcy, I appreciate you. Mallory, I appreciate you. You're welcome. Brandon. Going to watch the replay because I was doubting while you were answering me. I love it. Those silly doubts, man. They're just thoughts, though. Okay, y'all. Love you all. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. It's been a blast. It's been a total blast. And we'll see you later.